Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Donna Stevens and I'm the Chief Exec of the Girls' Schools Association. So we represent over 170 girls' schools in the UK. So you're not all in this room, but I know some are live streaming, so I don't know where the camera is. Looks like it's up there. Hello to those live streaming as well. Now, we are actually 150 years old today, not today, this year. And we were founded 150 years ago. Two headmistresses came together to collaborate on girls' education to advance opportunities for girls, really. And to give you an idea of some of the things they worked on, they actively campaigned to remove needlework as a compulsory part of the girls' curriculum, because they wanted you to have equal access to universities and subjects that... Oh, is that a tech problem?
No. I think it's okay.
No, it's okay. I'll continue. So that's what our foundations are, and you know that campaign continues today. So, which is why it's just something we're particularly passionate about are opportunities for girls, particularly in areas where maybe you're more underrepresented. Hence why we're really excited to collaborate with UCL. Thank you for inviting us on this AI revolution. And you know, it's a fast-moving space, and I'd probably in the 30 seconds as I've been talking, there's been new developments, so I won't keep you long, I promise. I just wanted mainly to say hi and let you know who we are, and also just to say look out for other events that we run in this sort of space. So we have a partnership with MKS accountancy firm in terms of insights into accountancy careers. We have partners with investment companies in the city where you assign a city mentor and you can explore careers in finance. And then other opportunities that are all about giving girls through photography or creative writing. But that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to head of the Ladies' College in Guernsey, a self-confessed AI geek.
Definitely.
And that's Danielle oh gosh, I've forgotten the name wrong. It's because Danielle Hartford Fox.
Thank you. Hello everybody. So the first thing I'm going to confess if I start speaking is I've written a speech rather than a talk. This is kind of a talk space, but I'm still going to give a speech. So sort of brace yourself for the big powerful speech. The second thing is I wrote a speech kind of thinking I was mostly talking to A-levels, but actually I can see there's lots of different ages. So we'll just go into it together and I think it'll be great. And what I'm going to talk about today is a bit about my worries about the current education system and the sorts of skills I think you're going to need. So there's a guy called Tom Fletcher who points out in his book, 10 Survival Skills for a World in Flux, that if you took a doctor from 150 years ago and you put them in a modern hospital, they'd be totally at sea, right? They wouldn't understand the new technology, the new ways of operating. But if you took a teacher from 150 years ago and you put them in a modern classroom, it would look pretty similar to them. They would see the desks, they would understand textbooks, examinations, handwriting, even some of the subject content. You see, education has not really changed for over 150 years. Our current system was designed in response to the first industrial revolution. Got to remember to click things. There we go, there's people and things. So skills that people traditionally learnt, which were passed from one generation to the next, skills such as weaving or shoemaking, were automated and replaced. The machines could now produce hundreds of pairs of shoes in the time it took a cobbler to produce one pair, and so those jobs just faded away. But there were some skills the machines couldn't do. Skills like holding knowledge, writing, arithmetic, and so the first great public school system was born, to equip children with the skills that the machines couldn't match, right? To give them the tools they needed in this new industrialised world. The belief then was that the key to a good life was knowledge, that teachers were the holders of that knowledge, and they would then pass it on to children, and then we would then separate our children on their ability to repeat that knowledge in examination conditions. It was a knowledge-based framework, created before there were many public libraries, let alone the internet. And it's the basis of the system we have today. And let's be clear, knowledge is valuable, right? Having knowledge at your fingertips allows us to make links between ideas. It allows us to see patterns and solve problems. It's in that sometimes chaotic melting pot of knowledge and experience that new links are seen and new understandings are made, right? However, our system as it stands doesn't just value knowledge, it has made knowledge acquisition the pinnacle of human achievement. It has ranked children on a linear scale based on how well they can learn siloed facts, separated into subjects and then into AO criteria, and then reproduce what they've learned alone in timed conditions in handwriting under strict examination expectations that control how you phrase and answer questions. And the CBI, which represents British industry, has for well over a decade been saying that this is a problem. Because in everything, what you measure is what gets done. And what we measure in schools are those skills. And what is not measured is your ability to work collaboratively, your ability to lead, your ability to influence or resist influence, your ability to speak, to build relationships, to be proactive, to be original, to challenge systems of power, to innovate. You have not been assessed on your ability to emotionally regulate yourself, to make others laugh, to manage change. All of the chaotic and brilliant and powerful aspects of you have been sidelined. And instead, you've been told, since you were children, that what makes a successful student is someone who can listen carefully to what they're told, stay on task, imitate the process you've been shown, memorise the information you're given, and then regurgitate that alone in timed conditions. You've been told that this set of skills is the key to a good life, that following this path is building in you what you need for the future. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I'm not sure it's been true for the last 20 years. I'm not sure why current veterinary exams are still operating often in universities exactly the same way they did 40 years ago, before most medical knowledge went on the internet, and that good vets are being deselected because they can't memorise information. My assumption is that we're just not brave enough to really question what makes a good modern vet and jettison some of the things that we've previously assumed. And even if you think our current education system is valid for now, I feel very confident it is not valid for what is coming. So I have had a passion and interest in AI for decades. When I was at university many years ago, I had the chance to work with a professor called Kim Plunkett one summer. He's a linguistics professor and he was working on early neural nets. He was interested in whether we could build self-learning models of language where we could just feed information in and then correct the information that came out. And here we are today with neural nets, large language models and machine learning, and the changes that are coming to our society and our economy are, in my opinion, going to make the changes of the first industrial revolution look like child's play. Now, so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the skills you're going to need? I am not a computer scientist, and there are people here today who will be able to give you a much deeper analysis in those areas. But in my simple non-tech brain, I can see three potential changes and challenges that are coming. So these are my kind of big concerns. Maybe Professor Treleaven will be able to relate some of them, but this is concern one. Firstly, AI is going to impact on our ability to know what is true. Now, I care about that because civilizations are constructed on a shared agreement of how we determine truth, right? The ability to agree on what has happened and what the facts are is what allows us to consider how as a society we should move forward. And that ability is being eroded, as you probably know. When I was at school, right, facts were in textbooks and opinions were what my Uncle Johnny would say in the pub, right? But now Uncle Johnny can give an opinion on Twitter, as can Professor Treleaven, and there's no systems to weigh the difference in those opinions. Echo chambers, conspiracy theories such as like QAnon or anti-vax, and the rabbit holes created by algorithms that start you on a site for updating and then lead you down the YouTube path of like Andrew Tate and 4chan are shaping the facts that we accept in our society and making it hard for democratic discourse to function. And then you have the people who are deliberately manipulating you. In 2015, Cambridge Analytica used Facebook likes to profile users and create fake news in order to influence voting in the Brexit referendum and the US presidential elections. But the technology that they use is going to look clunky compared to what this new wave of AI is going to be able to deliver. At the click of a button, the owners of those major forms of distribution, the owners of things like Meta and Google, will be able to use AI to accumulate all the things you've ever said online, every image you've liked, everything you've clicked on, in order to profile you psychologically, and then it will be able to create fake news in order to pitch against that to move your opinion in a certain direction. The impact that could have on democratic societies and elections is clearly profound. So for me, that's challenge one, right? Challenge two is what I'm going to call the alignment issue, i.e., will AI have our interests at heart? This I will lead to greater technological minds of my own. However, my basic understanding, and maybe I'll be corrected, is that we don't fully understand why large language models are as effective as they are, and yet we are ploughing onwards, fueled by economic incentives and a desire to be first. We're asking the questions, can we do it, rather than should we do it? And therefore, we've got to be careful, because that could lead us to create technology we don't fully understand and may not be able to fully control. I'll leave that worry there for other speakers to navigate. Finally, then, challenge three. How is this going to reshape the world of work? When it first became clear that ChatGPT could write an A-level essay at an A-grade standard, the question that went through all of the universities and schools was, how do we stop children using ChatGPT in order to write better essays? But of course, that is not the question. The question isn't, how do we stop children using ChatGPT to write better essay? The question is, if ChatGPT can write a better essay than the majority of people, why are we spending 12 years of your life and billions of pounds teaching you to write essays? Now, my point here, by the way, is not to say that there isn't usefulness in learning how to express your ideas in a clear and powerful fashion. Of course there is. My point is that as they did in the first industrial revolution, we have to start asking, what are the skills and traits that are unique to humans that AI cannot deliver? In the context of this developing technology, what is going to be the space left for you? Now, there's a lot of narrative, as we were talking about at lunch, there's a lot of narrative that AI will simply be a co-pilot, a friendly assistant to help us along. And whilst I'm sure it will act as a useful enabler, the truth is that the impact of AI is going to be much more profound. AI is a pattern recognizer. It can take 1 million pieces of data and spot patterns in milliseconds that would take humans decades, if not years to process. It can find patterns as you're going to hit. It can find patterns in blood tests and x-rays that identify early signs of disease. It can take every legal case and find precedent much faster than a solicitor. It can take every image from a fashion in the past year and work out what the trends are and then create a fashion design that will get ahead of that trend. The same goes for architecture, for veterinary diagnosis, for financial services, and on you go. We have built a knowledge-based economy, and AI is now faster and more able to accumulate and process knowledge than any human. So what will that mean for your jobs of the future? What will that mean for taxation? It's a worry for me. What will that mean for the skills that will be valued? The World Economic Forum said in its report last year that in the next 3 years, 50% of jobs will be significantly impacted by AI. What will it look like in 10? So, as an educator, the question I'm left with is, what is the space left for you? What skills are you going to need? Because I need to shape our educational provision now to be ahead of that curve rather than behind it. The girls that come into my year one, this coming September, will leave school in 2038 and the future will look different. One way to answer this question is to think about what are the spaces in which we just, maybe irrationally, just prefer working with humans, right? So how many of you would prefer an AI therapist or an AI boss or an AI prime minister? Even if the AI were more effective, and I think there are strong arguments that they might be, but even if the AI were more effective, we've evolved in some circumstances to want to interact with other humans, and thus I think those roles will remain, right? So yes, computer scientists will thrive, which is good, given where we're sitting right now, right? But so will natural communicators, leaders, relationship builders, problem solvers. And the Ladies College, my school, we started to think about the different pathways to the future because we recognise there isn't one route, right? I feel pretty confident. Plumbers have a pretty firm, like that's going to be a good role, right? So will be a CEO, so will be a diplomat. We've come together and created and developed 4 pathways, which we call change makers, innovators and creators, business leaders and science pioneers. And we've based that on a great deal of research. We've spoken to universities, diplomats, scientists, tech entrepreneurs, lawyers and major global organisations. And we've worked with our partner organisations like UCL, Specsavers and companies like PwC, and we've started to identify the core skills we think you're going to need. And so I thought today, what might be useful is I'm just going to pick the top 3, right? So here are my top 3 skills that I think you're going to need. Skill 1 is feeling comfortable with technology. Sometimes technology can feel like a foreign language that you just don't speak, but it's a language we're all going to have to become acquainted with. And it's not just in the context of like social media and communication. We have to start to feel comfortable with how to leverage and use this new wave of technology. And if, as I suspect many of you here today, you are good with tech, if you're curious about how to use machine learning, how to use large language models to solve some of the problems that are coming, then you are onto a winner. So we all now need to start to play and experiment with the opportunities that this tech builds and not get left anxiously on the sidelines, concerned that this isn't the world for us. This is the world for us. And hopefully today will be helpful in that. So that's skill 1. Skill 2, influence. We're moving into a period of increased connection and increased conflict. Climate change and global dynamics are shifting the conversation. The ability for one individual or one organisation to set and tilt the agenda is now very significant. People with influence are going to be powerful. People who understand how to communicate will set the music that we globally will dance to. And so good people, people who want to shape the world for better, need to start to understand the power, how to use the power and impact of influence and voice. How can you communicate your voice in a way that lands, that is heard, that is shared? How can you use your voice to bring people together, to de-escalate? How skilled are you at diplomacy, at keeping your head when all about losing theirs? The space is open, so we need good people to fill it and shape the culture both online and in real life. Finally, however, if you forced my hand and said, pick one skill, any one skill that will be the most important for your generation, that will separate the people who will thrive from the people that will struggle, I would say flexibility. Flexibility, the ability to delight in ambiguity, to be able to manage yourself and your thinking in a complicated and fast-changing world. So let's take a moment just to reflect on that skill. How do you feel about that idea? How do you personally feel about dealing with uncertainty, about not knowing whether your answer is right? Think back to moments. How do you feel about that? About not knowing whether something is or isn't going to happen? How do you feel about not being able to control a situation? I'm going to say that I think this is a particular challenge for women. Boys were raised in a space that allowed them to fail, right? When they smashed into something, when they got something wrong, when they said the wrong thing, everyone responds with boys will be boys. But there is no girls will be girls, right? From the beginning, we've been taught to get it right, to keep our dresses neat, to be pretty, to smile, to make others happy, to colour inside the lines. Our identity is often therefore shaped by doing things the right way. We make sure we are prepared, we practice and learn, and then we achieve. But the only way that works is in a world where there is a right or wrong answer. It's why we women have been smashing academic targets for years, right? Tell us what to do, and we do it. But for all of us perfectionists out there, that trait is no longer going to be one that you can coyly reveal at an interview as though it wasn't a big failing. It is a big failing. It is now a genuine emotional and practical obstacle that we're going to have to get past. We're going to have to breathe out. I've spoken to CEOs of a lot of organisations in the last 18 months, and without fail, they tell me that the key factor on whether someone is currently thriving or struggling is whether they can embrace change, whether they can feel comfortable not knowing, whether they can find joy in uncertainty. So that is the challenge I lay before you. If you want to thrive, you're going to have to really examine the pieces of yourself that tie you down, the pieces that hold you in a place of anxiety. And in case it's helpful, I would add one thing I think I've discovered. People talk a lot about fear of failure in girls. And the opposite of fear of failure is not confidence. It's not suddenly that you have to figure out how to grab hold of that elusive thing of self-esteem and just put it on like it can come out of a box. Confidence is a tricky beast. It takes years of time and usually a lot of therapy to achieve, right? No, the opposite of fear of failure isn't confidence. The opposite of fear of failure is playfulness. It's playfulness. It's curiosity. So start to explore, to play, and to experiment. Try things out. See what explodes and what works well, right? Enter this stage with a sense that you're just interested in why things happen, what is possible, what you can learn. Like the generations born into the first industrial revolution, the jobs of your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents are unlikely to be the jobs that you stay in, or the jobs that your children will even see. The people who hold tight to perfectionism, to control, the people who wed themselves to how things are going to find the next few decades difficult. The people who can dance along the top of change, who can find joy in it, curiosity in new ideas, and building new skills, in making new connections, they are going to thrive. So approach this afternoon with curiosity. If you're an improviser, you know the phrase, yes and. So yes and the world. Hold things more lightly. Trust your voice and your skills more than getting things right. Delight in uncertainty and delight in growth. There is potential for us to shape a beautiful and exciting world, but I think we're going to have to let go of the world that was in order to build the world that we want. Thank you. I want us to have a conversation, but I know that Professor Relevant's already going to jump in.
You mentioned plumbers.
Yes.
My plumber business as an aspiring DJ. He said to me, I'm using ChatGPT to generate my playlists now. He said, tell me what I need to do. I said, let's have some rules of engagement. If you make a fortune out of ChatGPT, you find me another plumber.
Very good. Okay, so I wanted to have this, we've got probably about 8 minutes, but I wanted to have a conversation with you about how you felt about those ideas that I put in front of you. Because I basically, so do you, first of all, do you agree, as students sitting here today, do you agree that you're concerned about whether the skills that are kind of driven by the GCSE and A-level system are the skills that you're going to need? Have you thought about that before? And what do you think about that? Anyone agree or disagree? We can have debate. Go on, what do you think? Okay, well, let's vote. Let's vote. So who agrees with me that actually you're worried that the skills aren't the skills that you're going to need? Okay, almost everyone. Anyone that thinks, no, these are the skills we're probably going to need? Oh, God, everyone. Everyone thinks they aren't the skills we need. Okay, and that's really big, isn't it? Because if we're all spending 12 years of your life, and for whether it's the government or your parents spending a lot of money on that education, we've got to really consider that, right? Like, why is it that we're stuck in that cycle? You know, I was having a conversation with people from GSA, actually. We were talking about how the exam boards are going to make, by 2030, at least one of the big subjects is going to be entirely typed. And they're like, oh, well, we need to start teaching typing. Like, this is brilliant. Now we're going to start teaching typing at exactly the moment that voice to text works, right? So like at the moment where everyone in the world is now voice to text, we're going to move the schools into typing. In the same way that the world right now is typing, you've all been handwriting. It's like schools are constantly behind the skills that you're actually going to need, when in fact what schools should be is ahead of the skills that you're going to need. What do you think about the 3 skills I said? Obviously, for everybody sitting here today, you already are people that are excited about technology, and that will be a great path. But what do you feel about the influence and flexibility? Do you agree with me that it's harder, that women are trained maybe to be a bit more perfectionist and a bit less flexible? I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, you kind of experienced that. Yeah.
I think the flexibility, I think it helps. School does in a way help because of just random assignments I get through the week, and you always have to figure out how to get them in, whilst I may not like them.
Yes.
In a way is preparing.
Yes. So that idea of juggling, and it's not that the current system doesn't build any good skills. It actually does. It builds like self-discipline. It builds the ability to prioritize tasks, right? But it's kind of a side effect rather than the purpose of the system. But that's a good example of flexibility. But one of the things I would, if we were then playing devil's advocate on the other side, it's like we actually reduce flexibility. We separate knowledge into subjects, which is really weird if you think about it. Like, why do we do that? And you know, we were having that conversation even at universities. We do that, right? So we separate knowledge into subjects, which is the opposite of how the world works. There's no subjects in the world. In the world, you have to be able to pull all the different information together, and yet the school system separates it. So it's like there are some. You're absolutely right. There are some good skills, aren't there? But we probably need a bit more. And I think there are some real traps. Because I do think that there's a sense that there are right and wrong answers, and there's a sense of real pressure and anxiety to get the right or wrong answers. Do you all feel that? Particularly if you're quite capable, like if you're quite academic, early on, you get defined by being good at that, and so you get scared of letting go of it, right? Yeah. Oh, another professor talking about from scientists. Anyone else got any thoughts about that? So one question I've got for you is, that's one perfect example. Where else do you think you're learning flexibility? Yeah.
He's never on time.
Yes,
so
flexibility is fine.
I think it's sort of the experiences you get through school. When I went to a space design competition, they split us up, and then in the groups we were in, it's into smaller groups.
Yeah.
And it was you had to make a base on the moon.
Yeah.
And just the ways that maybe not in school itself, because I think personally working in groups in school never feels quite the same as it did there. Because in school we have like these set things, like you're doing this, you're doing that, you're not communicating between them.
Yeah.
But where this was we had to talk between the construction team and one to well-being team, had to talk about where they would put the rooms, everything was just so tied together. Yeah, like they said, there was no separate subjects.
Yes.
I think there are definitely opportunities we have, but we have to look for them. They're not openly available to everybody.
Yes.
And I think things like that, I don't know how available they are to other people in the country who are
Yes.
in areas where it's less.
Yes. So I think what you're talking about is what in education speak we would almost call project-based learning. One of the things that you just sort of mentioned that I think is really interesting is that when you do projects at school, maybe you all agree with this, everybody kind of gets told what they need to do, or a couple of people like just do the whole project and then everyone else just says thumbs up at the end. Has everyone had that experience? Which by the way is how it works in work, right? So when you get out into work, sometimes you're in a project and you carry and no one else does anything. And the skill we need to learn in that moment is how do we not just pretend that hasn't happened, how do we engage that, right? Like how do we have the conversation with teammates that aren't pulling their weight? How do we actually lead? How do we actually coordinate? How do we actually cooperate? And in schools, we're so driven because of the way that league tables works and the way that government assessment works to get you to get the good grades at GCSE and A-level that we almost panic as teachers to give you the space and time to figure that stuff out, right? And so, as you say, it becomes a co-curricular role in the heart of the education system. Any other questions? Otherwise, I should. Yeah, one more again.
Do you think creative subjects like music and art and English should be taken down because they can be replicated and their jobs can be taken away?
Do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, why not? Why do you not?
Because it's not creative. Because what they do is they steal work from other people and they form it into some sort of like amorphous blob.
Yeah.
But I feel like many people don't pursue those types of subjects like music and art at A-level or in careers because it's not financially as stable because it will be taken over by AI.
Yeah.
And also careers such as moving careers like AI and technology is more pursued.
Yeah, I think unless you're going to be a computer scientist, which I would put good money on being a good career in the next like 20 or 30 years, right? Unless you're going to be a computer scientist, I don't think you know what career you're going to do. So then I think what you need to do is build skills, right? And if you ask me whether creativity is an important skill, I would say yes. I do think that one of the things you've got to be careful about in creativity in schools is we often mistake creativity for being able to draw or being able to play an instrument. Whereas that is not creativity, right? That's a skill, it's an important skill, it's a great skill, but that isn't actually the ability to create and innovate or be in flow or be able to create something. And so I think we've got to be really careful. So I think if one is approaching the future by thinking, I need to do something that'll be safe, unless you're going to be a computer scientist, then I think you're not onto a winner, because I don't think there's any other career that I feel very confident will be safe. And so therefore, what you should actually be doing is, what am I good at? Where do I thrive? How can I like build my leadership, my communication, my influence skills, my flexibility? If I'm a creator, how do I use my innovation abilities? How do I cooperate? Like you've got to start to think about what your skills are, because that will put you in the best place to be in a world that's going to change. I would say we're going to see more change in the next 30 years than we've probably seen in the last 1,000. Right, and so the amount of change we're going to have to navigate is very significant. I don't know. I'm looking at Dan. Does that feel reasonable? Do you think we're going to get more change in the next 30 years?
I totally agree.
Okay, great. And he's a really big computer scientist, so therefore we should listen more than we listen to me. Okay, I will wrap it up there. I'm happy to chat in the break, or if you've got questions, you've got afterwards. But thank you very much. Let me pass the rest to him.
Just to add to what you were saying, the new wave of startups are going to be creative. This is going to be music, art, performance, etc. Empowered by technology. So yeah, creative's a grey area.
Robert, you're good to go.
Good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was when I was talking about poor depressed female students and things like this. I was thinking to myself, I'm surrounded by a bunch of dangerous women. I don't see this.
More dangerous women.
Okay, so I'm Professor of Computer Science at UCL, and we're arguably the top AI department in Europe. And I'm just going to talk about opportunities. And that's why, at the moment, we're talking about the AI educational revolution as a tsunami. It's going to wipe out lots of jobs. But I came from Cornwall, so I had to have a surfing analogy. What you want to do is think not about the tsunami, but the opportunities that are arising. So I'm really just I'll say a little bit about AI, but the big thing is you taking your opportunities, not just doing what you're taught, but also having your own projects on the side. We call them enrichment projects. Students don't get any credit for it, but they learn a great deal. I thought it might be useful to start with my own journey. This isn't sort of grandstanding. We're talking about the AI revolution now. 25 years ago, you had the IT revolution, when people had to be able to use, Microsoft Word and spreadsheets and things like that. And there was a revolution before that, which was the computer revolution. Now, I was brought up on a tiny farm in Cornwall. This is really a peasant farm, and the sub story is we didn't even have a bathroom. We only had an outside toilet. I can't believe this. It must be illegal. And we used to work every day of the week. okay? And I say to my students, you cannot believe the amount of manual work that I've done before I went to university. The good thing was, it was such an impoverished upbringing, clearly there was no future in it. And by chance, one of my father's friends, when we were casting around for something to do, for me to do, they said, well, there's this new area called computers. Hard to imagine. Now, we're talking about the sort of middle 60s now. And I was the first generation to go to university to study computer science. And it's what we call in startups first mover advantage. There weren't very many people around. I had the prerequisite skills and I had some fantastic opportunities. Even when I was a student, I was putting...
Still only got sound on.
You're doing that deliberately, aren't you?
No.
So I was in charge of the software for the Concorde project, you know, never flow Concorde. So there were things like that, unbelievable opportunities. I'll talk about some of the other things during my talk. I was made a full professor probably about 40 years ago, so I was made a full professor when I was a child, okay? and I remember when I just finished my PhD, you know, so a student, you know, just out of university, I was appointed visiting professor at the Free University of Brussels. So we went from, my wife and I went from our hall of residence life to having an apartment on the best street in Brussels and a maid. So these are the sorts of opportunities you get. I've lectured in over 60 countries, so in excess of 9 startups. The only reason was I had some unique skills and I got lucky. If you have the skills, as Danielle was saying, in AI and programming, the world is your oyster. That's basically my talk. I'll move on. So, Dan will expand on this later probably, but the genie is out of the bottle. Think opportunity, don't think problems. Just a little bit of my history. Most of the work that I've done is in automation in finance. You know, 25 years ago, we built fraud detection systems, we built algorithmic trading platforms, etc. And now the two big things are, and this answers your question, one of my ex-students rang up who works in the music industry and said, how do you fancy doing ChatGPT for hip hop? I said, it sounds wonderful, let's do it. Then I have to go to Google and find out what hip hop is. You know? But, you know, these are the sort of opportunities that just jump out of the window. And now I've got some really interesting things working with the senior judges on trying to create a judicial infrastructure to support the courts and the judges and such like. Unbelievable opportunities, really. The other thing that I'm also famous for is I ran the National Sizing Survey. What the hell is a computer scientist doing running the National Sizing Survey? So we measured 11,000 UK adults with 3D body scanners in partnership with the 14 largest clothing companies. So all the clothing measurements in the UK are based on our work. I should add, my wife said, that's why nothing fits anymore. There's always sniping at home. So, you know, AI and computing's everywhere. Great, you know, so just often I ask students, what are your hobbies? You know, there's always one who says mathematics. No, I want to know what your hobbies are, not, you know, where you play. And they'll tell you I'm really passionate about music. We have a talk later about this. So why is this important? So if you think back about the IT revolution, which is about 25 years ago, if you were coming out of university now and you couldn't use Word, Excel and things like that, you'd be essentially unemployable. And the problem is that probably 90% of the students that will be coming out of university in the next few years have no sort of technological skills. And in the past, they would have gone into doing administration jobs in, in companies or civil service or etc. Now, some AI will be doing that. And you could say you can't even get a job as a shelf stacker in Tesco's because some robot will be doing it better and cheaper than you. So if you've got the skills, you've got these wonderful opportunities. Educate yourself. If you haven't got the skills, there is the tsunami coming. It's for everybody. What you've got is a sort of what we call professional productivity tools at the moment. So, for example, the lawyers are well ahead of the game. They've got systems that will generate a draft contract, tell them where the ambiguities and risks are, and then the partner in the law firm just goes in and sanitizes the contract. So as the big law firms say, trainee solicitors, legal clerks, toast. Because some AI is doing it quicker, better, more effectively than that. So what are you going to do with this? A lot of jobs that you may have thought, well, I'll get a job at doing X, disappear. What do you need? You need some basic programming skills. You're going to be world-class in programming because even now ChatGPT will write your programs for you or draft them. You need to have a basic understanding of what sort of AI can do for you. But the most important thing is ambition. Don't expect to just go to the school and be taught, what to do. Teach yourself. This is they say in startup companies, ambition is more important than intelligence or and that. That's very important. It's learning by doing, which is what Danielle was saying. Do things, teach yourself. Do projects in companies, do it for real. So really, this is probably a non-slide in many ways. It's just saying AI is affecting schools. You'll be able to get a textbook already. You can do this. You can have a conversation with a textbook. So getting advice, there's some brilliant material online so you can teach yourself at whatever level you are. Otherwise you're not going to get a job as a deliverer, but we'll move on. As I said, the prerequisite skills, are things like Python, AI and machine learning, etc. But the key thing is not to rely on schools to teach you the skills you need, but actually for you to actually take control of your own education and have ambition to actually try and do things that you're interested in, because AI is everywhere. I'm just going to talk a little bit about AI. This is probably boring, but we'll do it anyway. There's a couple of, when we talk about algorithms, there's really two areas. There's what we call computational statistics that requires computers, and what's called artificial intelligence. And there are two types really. There's what we call knowledge-based systems, and I'll just show you what I mean by that. And then there's what we call machine learning. This is systems that can program themselves, which normally is called AI. These are rule-based systems. They've been around for a long time, probably about 40 years. And when you call up a call center and you're trying to get a loan or a mortgage or something like that, the call center operator has a sort of menu of things to ask you. And this is usually driven by the knowledge that's encoded as if-then rules. Do you have a good credit rating? No, okay, call back. And then it gets to the end and says whether you should accept the loan. Obviously, this is a toy example. Now we'll go on to the machine learning. Now, machine learning has been around, 40, 50 years. We were working on neural networks 35 years ago, trying to do sort of financial forecasting. But that was what we call traditional AI. And what it does is it sucks in a load of data, looks for patterns, and tries to make a prediction. So why have we now got this AI revolution? And this comes to what's called generative AI, where firstly you train it on absolutely huge amounts of data, then you can have a dialogue with it. And there's some very interesting things that sometimes it tells you a load of garbage, what we call hallucinations. And everybody gets very excited. Oh, it told me X, but it's wrong. I said, how many times have you talked to humans? And they're giving you a load of garbage. So so the really interesting thing, what people are worried about in the future, and we're sort of on the cusp of this, is what's called AI general intelligence, AGI. And this is where computers can do some tasks better than humans. And the good example of this is DeepMind, the company that was spun out of UCL, 400 million to Google, and they produced a Go program that beat a grandmaster. And I think these programs can play chess better than for years. So that's sort of general intelligence. What they call algorithmic superintelligence, which is the sort of holy grail, is can you have a system that actually does better than humans in all things? Okay, so that's the sort of discussion point. Nothing to worry about. What we found over the years, is the importance of having the human in the loop. So, as Danielle said, the AI is very good, or algorithms are very good at accumulating vast amounts of data and arranging it for you, like an assistant. What they're very poor at is long-term predictions, judgments, and things like that. So, I think humans will be around for a while, sort of, and that. So, you mentioned about neural networks. Two things to point out: a chatbot like Alexa is just a simple conversation system. It doesn't really have, it does nothing more than just trying to understand what words you're using. We call it natural language understanding. The generative AI, you can actually have a conversation with it. I think it's absolutely fascinating. If you tell it, actually, that's wrong, it then just hallucinates even more and tries to convince you that it knows better than you. Very human, isn't it? Yeah, it is very human. There's now people writing that maybe the intelligent algorithms are so good they're actually putting these hallucinations out to convince you actually they're not as intelligent as they really are. So this is a sort of conspiracy theory in computer science. So they're all based on what are called neural networks or artificial neural networks. And notice they're not trying to do a model of the brain, they're just inspired by it. And what you have, like little transistors there. So the way you train a neural network is when you feed in the information, along the arcs that connect one neuron to the next one, there's a so-called weight. And this is like a little tap. And when it makes an error, you feed it back in and you adjust the taps. Sometimes it doesn't know. And what they call generative AI large language models, it does it on a grand scale. Huge amounts of data, huge neural networks. And the sort of knock-on effect is it's hugely expensive to train these systems. It produces a load of carbon from the computer center. So these are all sorts of moving parts that, which we're thinking about. So, old idea, and I said these are like little transistors. You take all the inputs into one of these so-called artificial neurons, like a little transistor. If the inputs all add up to something interesting, it fires. That's it. Very simple, isn't it? Dull, but simple. Yeah. Okay, just as a simple example, if you're trying to train it to but recognise, say, let's say handwritten A's. But the way you train these is you give it a training pair, which is you give it an example and you give it the answer, and you keep pushing these through, and the correct output is, and you feed it back and you adjust it so it works. And then you take away the training examples, you put in a handwritten A, and it recognises it. That's that. And the nice thing is you can also do it upside down, back to front, etc. It does that as well. So it's quite really clever, isn't it? So what do we do here? The whole thing about, we're in a computer science department. We've got 1,400 students. We're one of the top places in the world. We've got some of the best students in Europe. And what we encourage them to do is to do things themselves. So we teach them, obviously, loads of courses, exams, projects and things like this. But the key thing, and one of the things we do, we encourage them to start companies. And we spin out a huge number of companies. I'll give you an example later. One of my ex-PhD students sold his company recently for 1.2 billion. So the joke is he can afford to eat. Yeah, probably rather well. But there's loads of startups. And one of the good things about doing a startup, which is sort of our equivalent of a project, is it's actually a great way to deliver impact to society. Okay? Whereas, writing a scientific paper isn't, probably the person's mother reads it, but no one else. We mentioned ChatGTP. This is Sam Altman, the founder of ChatGTP. This is the UCL CS lecture theatre with 600 students in it. Interestingly, when he was giving his lecture, there were 4 students outside with little placards saying, "Ban AI algorithms." So that my students went out and said, which department are you in? Oh, we're in the Slade School of Fine Art. So what the blip, 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 about algorithms, So there's an example, but it did amuse everybody. But he was mobbed by the students because he looks like a 10-year-old, but inspiring. This is an example of 2 of my students a few years ago. They sold their company, go back. They sold their company to a big American company for $26 million. So the interesting thing is digital technology is very straightforward. Age doesn't seem to be a barrier. And therefore more and more of the undergraduates are trying to do a research project and then try and commercialise it. What I'd like to do is to get to the situation, arrive in UCL Computer Science as a student, leave as a millionaire. Okay? But we've responded to a huge amount of companies. And the students find it inspirational. And they really aren't very much older than you are. So if you want to do it, you can do it. And digital technology allows you to, because it's very accessible. So this is what we do to empower students. 70% of them do projects with companies now, so they do their final year project or MSc project with a company, but an increasing number will do a startup, which is trying to do something that they can then take forward to commercialise. Here's an example. We do a lot in finance, obviously, we're in London, and I've got a bunch of students who are producing ChatGTP for wealth management. It's led by Carmen, who's an MSc student who's worked for 8 years as an investment manager before coming here. But the techie, the key techie, is Anton, who's a second-year computer scientist. Although I wouldn't say, Anton probably knows more about ChatGTP than the staff, because he's just obsessed with it. Not something I'd say to the staff, obviously. Probably poor Anton would be killed. And they've got a bunch of advisors that helps them. So the whole point of my talk is that this is a wonderful opportunity. You shouldn't see this as, oh my God, I'm not going to get a job. Try and do things yourself, try and educate yourself, and then you'll have unbelievable opportunities. And, you know, as the Americans say, it's like living the dream. Okay? And maybe 90% of the students who won't try and educate themselves and will, you know, the so-called rabbit in the headlight, could have a very miserable existence in the future. But some of you can follow your passions, maybe music or something like that, and unbelievable opportunities. So I'll stop there. Any questions, comments? No, you don't need to clap. Any questions?
Previous waves of hype about AI, the late 50s or late 70s and 80s, I've seen an apathy afterwards when AI sort of failed to live up to the expectations for a percent of the time. So, for example, when single-layer neurons were unable to solve linearly inseparable problems.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be another phase of apathy in a few years about generative AI?
It's a very good question. At the moment, we're in a sort of golden time. I sometimes make the mistake of saying, we're going to get this breakthrough in the next year. Then you pick up the daily newspaper and somebody's already done it. So at the moment, you've got innovation accelerating. So we've at least got probably 5 good years of opportunities and such excitement. But yes, these things sort of go up and down. At the moment, there's lots of excitement about AI hallucinations. But you have to recognize we're at the start of the journey. And there's a lot of researchers trying to solve that problem. So, you know, you don't want to be one of the people debating whether it's going to crash and burn, because, you know, it's gone too far now. But what you need to do is say, what can I do to enjoy myself and, you know, have a super interesting career?
This is a bit of a larger based question, but how would you see like lower income countries like dealing with AI if they don't have the same kind of opportunities?
It's very interesting comment. I find, I teach the entrepreneurship course, 400 students, you know, nightmare. It's always the immigrants who are actually more ambitious than the locals. Now, all of you have probably been brought up in prosperous middle-class homes, and many people think there's a money tree grows in the back garden. If you get somebody, you know, from the Philippines or, you know, one of the African countries, they've seen poverty and what they want to do is they're hugely ambitious. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, I used to have someone come in and lecture about smartphones, you know, and apps and things. This is a long time ago. And he used to say, which is the country with the leading digital wallet technology in the world? And everybody would say, the United States, no. Germany, no. Japan, no. China, no. You know, blah, blah, blah. Kenya. The reason is they're able to skip a generation. So if you were wanting to look for investments, it's going to be Africa, it's going to be the new frontier. So a lot of poor countries, and another one that, another example, a friend of mine from Singapore who's into tech said, amazing, the Indonesians, and they've got, you know, 100 million population, have decided to adopt the Singapore science education system. I said, wow, that's going to have a big impact. In 10 years' time, you're going to have millions, tens of millions of Indonesians with a good education in technology, programming, AI, etc., who are prepared to work for less than the Vietnamese. So these are the things that why you need to think about your future. And because the poor people only just want to, you know, move up in the world.
I'm going to CSN next. I lived in Kenya for 8 years, and it's just really interesting to watch. So I was there during M-Pesa and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that the West has had a real advantage. We've got knowledge-based systems. We've got it down, right? Like we have British schools, British universities, best knowledge-based, some of the best knowledge-based systems in the world. But have we got entrepreneurship skills in the same way we have in Kenya? No, I don't think we do. Right, so I actually think that the real risk here is not for the third world countries. The real risk here is for the complacency of countries like ours, that we will just assume that the same narrative will continue, and that therefore you'll be left with the problem.
Yeah. So fantastic opportunities, but take control of your life. Any?
How do you think it's going to affect things like maybe prediction of natural disasters or jobs in like geology?
Yes, things can only get better. You know, it's people are just trying it out in a number of different areas. That's why I gave an example of the AI for hip hop. You know, it's a sort of oddball one, but it's likely to be huge. And already they're using it for AI for weather forecasting, and it's doing a lot better than the traditional companies can do it. But this is an opportunity, so you need to ask yourself what excites you. And if it's natural disasters and such like and doing that product prediction, do a startup. You know, build an AI system, try and commercialize it. Because not only will you learn a lot about the technology, the AI, but if you do a breakthrough, you're able to package it up and deliver it to society. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, I've overrun, so I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Lara. I'm from the CDT for AI-enabled healthcare systems here at UCL. So I'm just a PhD student, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about AI in healthcare, share a bit of sort of how I got to doing this kind of PhD, because the story probably isn't what you expect, and then some opportunities for you guys in the future in this space. So my journey, as you can probably imagine, started at school. I was in sixth form, doing my A-levels, did maths, biology, history and German, which I think everyone can kind of agree is reflective of someone with plenty of interests, but nothing really that specific that they want to go into. So I knew I loved science more than I probably loved politics or economics or history and things like that. So that seemed like a good route to go down. So then I had to sort of enrich my school curriculum with some extracurricular activities. So I did some introductory programming courses at Tech, found out I quite like Python. It's exciting to me, I could do this. I did some open lectures at places like Imperial College, which is a really great, they have like a weekly lecture series. And then I also did some work experience here with actually Professor Trelevin, where I researched for a week on programmable biology, all about the ethics and social impact. Now, although that paper will probably never see the light of day because it wasn't very good, it did make me really interested in doing research as a scientist. But obviously that then begs the question, what should I research? So results day 2019 comes around, and I, after a few volunteering trips, I was like, you know what, I think, yeah, I'll do biology, do it at Queen Mary, and life's good. Get to be in London, lots of opportunities, lots of networking. So throughout that, I got a very good basis in the biological sciences. We were being taught a lot of cutting edge technologies which were going on, and I chose to basically specialize in biochemistry, genetics, and neuroscience during my degree. So I was doing all of that, and I also did some work at Huazhong University of Science and Technology, out of which, although the time difference did sometimes make me want to, rip my hair out, it was great because I got a qualification in statistical epidemiology, which kind of fostered this love for having a bit of maths involved in biological sciences. My final year research project was at the Blizzard, and I did evaluating a CRISPR-Cas9 system to target regulatory elements associated to cardiovascular disease, which in short, gene editing for heart disease.
there I learned I love lab work. I wanted to keep doing that for a bit. And I was also quite interested in bioinformatics, because that's how we kind of look at all of these gene regions and things like that. So my next step was my master's. I knew I wanted to keep going, loved being at university, loved learning. So I did some research, and the MSc Experimental Pharmacology and Therapeutics here at UCL seemed to be the right step for me. It encompassed all of the things I loved, a bit of neuroscience, novel therapeutics, and I specialise in experimental neuropharmacology, so new drugs that work on the brain, and cell therapy. So I researched an immunosuppressive encapsulation system for delivery of dopamine-releasing cells in Parkinson's, which is basically, I'll go into it in a little bit, but it's just a new way of sort of trying to alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's. And through that, I was able to work with the Zayed Centre for Research into Rare Diseases in Children, UCL Engineering, and UCL Centre for Nerve Engineering, which gave me a really good kind of generalised basis for meeting new people within the university, new opportunities, seeing what kind of things are happening. I also attended, as Professor Trelawney said, his entrepreneurship course, which really made me think about, you know, how much technology is impacting not only education but science in the future. So this is sort of the long and short of the project. So essentially it was all about taking stem cells, turning them into a different type of nerve, and then figuring out a way to get that into the brain so they can release dopamine, which alleviates Parkinson's. But the bit I really fell in love with, which is kind of where I started leaning towards AI, was over here, modeling mathematically my experiments. So that was all about thinking about the intricacies of the experiments, how to optimize it without spending the unbelievable amount of money on basically repeating it. Money and time, that's the enemy of all scientific endeavours, basically. So I knew I wanted to stay within biological sciences, and I love this element, the maths and the computation. So the logical step then was to apply for a PhD. Still wanted to keep learning, still wanted to keep working at it. So then I applied for the CDT, so Centre for Doctoral Training in Artificial Intelligence Enabled Healthcare Systems, which is based here at UCL. So that's me and my lovely cohort. So the way the CDT basically functions, it's a 1+3 system. So you have 1 year, which is an MRes, so Masters by Research, and then 3 years, which is your PhD. You start off with your PhD project pretty much immediately out of the gate, and you get to take different modules so that you can all kind of get to the same level. So the reason for this is because they take 10 students, and then you can be from any STEM background. So from what I've just described, I'm pretty sure it's obvious that I was not a computer scientist, and I was not a pure mathematician when I started. So, but other people were. We have mathematicians, we have medical doctors, we have computer scientists in the cohort. So the idea is you all share ideas, and this leans into the interdisciplinary sort of system of teaching, which has been touched upon today, which is what really is going to bring you forward into the workplace, you know, working together, sharing ideas, bouncing off each other. And the aim is essentially to create a collaborative, ethical, interdisciplinary work when we all work together. And I'm based at the Global Business School for Health. The CDT is at the Institute of Health Informatics, and we are funded by the UK Research and Innovation Council, through which, very fortunately, we get a lot of opportunities to go all over the world and share science and meet other people, and plenty of resources. So just a little bit about what I actually do for my PhD, because it is linked to what I used to do as well. So mine's all about natural language processing for pharmacology. So this essentially demonstrates the problem we have identified. So you imagine you make a new drug. Great. Now we need to get it to a market. There's a big lag between that element and getting it actually commercialized. So you have all of these trials. One singular drug can cost more than $1.8 billion to just produce, essentially. It can take about 12 years sometimes just to get it from this initial stage all the way to the market. And main problem is, at phase 1 trials, that's the first time you try them in a human being, 90% of compounds fail. They don't get through. And then more compounds are rejected as the phases go on. So this is an issue. How do we make that more effective? How do we make more drugs pass through the phase 1 trials? How do we sort of like make this more efficient? How do we get more medications out to the general population? So the issue is, when you do a phase 1 trial, You have very small, very similar populations. So for example, you could have 10 people, let's call them 10 women aged 18 to 22, who are all from like a Southeast Asian background, right? You test it there, you make a dosing curve, and you're like, okay, so in this specific population, fantastic. We see that this drug at these doses becomes as effective as this with this much toxicity. Okay, brilliant, you have a little curve. And how is that going to translate to, say, a 60 to 65-year-old man from like a white background or a black background or basically any other demographic? How does that translate? The answer is it doesn't. You get a very ineffective calculation, which then leads to a fragmented dosing algorithm landscape. So that just means you have loads and loads of different ways to describe the exact same compound, just because of the way they were tested. So for example, this is vancomycin, it's an antibiotic, and it has more than 50 different dosing mechanisms. So how do we kind of like reconcile this? How do we unite the dosing curves? How do we improve our delivery of medications? So I'm sure you've probably guessed this, the answer is AI. So this is sort of my year one work. So it's all about using human-in-the-loop active learning. Without getting technical about it, essentially, lots of the information about these drugs are trapped inside of free text documentation. So you've got loads of scientific journals, loads of clinical trial reports, and they all say different things. You, as one human being, likely cannot read every single thing on the entire internet and from every company to make a good guess at how you're going to dose something. So then the idea is you want to use natural language processing in order to extract this information, and so that you can model, you can basically model how the drugs work better. So in my first year, it's all about getting this information out of the text. So here it's all about looking at the text, identifying where these valuable bits of information are, bringing them out, giving that as an example to a computer, and then letting a computer do it on loads of other different types of sample. The important thing about human in the loop is that it gives that extra validation. You're not just letting a computer go and like guess and say like, oh yeah, that's important, that's not important, I know what that is. No, it feeds back with samples of high uncertainty, stuff it doesn't really know about. You then say, oh okay, I'm going to correct it, this is what it actually is, I'm going to feed it back into a computer, and then it's going to continue to make these guesses until you have like everything labeled and you sort of know where all of your information is. So that's like basically year one, that's what's happening. In the future, so like what this is all going towards is an automated machine learning prototype tool, which is called PKPD AI, which is available at the moment, and it's all about kind of using my better system for extracting this information, putting it into PKPD AI and seeing how it works. Then in the year after, I want to basically do that unification of the dosing curve using all of this information I've gleaned, and then hopefully in year 4 bring in a bit of economic study. So the opportunities from doing a PhD like this are very broad, and I'm still not sure what I actually like to do. In terms of what I have at the moment is I collaborate with Pfizer and GSK at the moment, and after a productive trip to Boston in February, hopefully Massachusetts Institute of Technology as well. And in the future, hopefully look at working with Conception X and the Alan Turing Institute and all sorts of other fantastic companies, and potentially having a startup. But yeah. So that's just kind of where I'm personally thinking of taking this kind of research. But the opportunities for you guys, completely endless. Like I've only talked about one tiny little niche within this enormous landscape, right? So just in healthcare alone, these are just some examples that I could think about, like I thought about while I was making this. So diagnostics is a really, really good one to be looking into. So already we have great AI algorithms which can tell the difference between a lung with cancer and a lung without cancer. We've got RepFound, which is a brilliant model which can tell you a lot about different types of eye conditions. You can also look at disease course prediction. You can predict maybe after a stint in emergency care, how well will a person, how likely is it that they will make a full recovery? You could look at how likely it is for someone to potentially develop a certain disease in the future. You can also go into the drug design and development. You can go into kind of the more chemical understanding of different types of compounds which may be useful. You could go into how we can combine different things, how we can homologize compounds together and kind of make good guesses at how they might be behaving. You also don't have to go necessarily into the pure healthcare stuff. You could go into stuff like resource allocation and healthcare management, which is really critical in our NHS. How do you allocate, say, beds and not like doctors and machines to different people? How can you predict maybe the different types of populations which might be coming into a hospital? How can you do things like that to save money and save time? You can also go into policy making. This is a really big one. So as we all know, there's some debate there's quite a lot of debate actually, in things like AI regulation, right? Which on one hand makes it an unbelievably exciting space to be innovating in right now. But on the other hand, it also does need people to step in who really understand AI and start to govern that. And another massive thing which people, especially in healthcare, is all about data protection and security. How do you make sure that the information you're collecting from hospitals to make different types of predictions, how do you make sure it's safe? How do you make sure it's ethical? How do you make sure it's robust? Those are the main questions we are asking in the CDT at the moment in terms of how to develop your work further. But yeah, so I've only touched on a few of them here. There are so many more opportunities within healthcare. But yes, I'd like to say thank you to every single person who has gotten me this far in my academic career, and I'd like to open the floor to any questions at all. Thank you. Questions? Yes?
Can AI be used to predict the development of antibiotic resistance? Because obviously it's developing faster than we can keep up with it and put drugs out. And why hasn't it already been implemented? If it hasn't.
Your question is about antibiotic resistance?
Yeah, so using AI to predict antibiotic resistance.
I mean, yeah, you definitely can, but it's definitely an application which I believe obviously is possible. Problems are, it depends on how much data you have to be able to, you have to collect quite a bit of data in order to train an AI algorithm to be able to make solid predictions later. It's also quite difficult because it's quite context dependent, right? So it depends a lot on where you are, what kind of like antibiotic you're talking about, what kind of virus you're talking about, how quickly a virus mutates is kind of, something quite difficult to predict, things like that. So I think it's more that it's coming, but it's not necessarily something that's like widespread. I think people do work on it quite a bit. Yes.
So you talked a bit about training data, which feels like one of the most valuable things right now is training data. And I just wondered where we were with the NHS and training data and what your thoughts were about it. Because there was I don't know where we actually are, but there has been a talk for a while about essentially NHS providing centralising all data. I'm right about this, not centralising all data and using a training source, which would perhaps be one of the most powerful data sets in the world. And I just wondered.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main problem with anything like that is definitely about data security. Of course, if you could collate all NHS records, and obviously there would be things like anonymizing them and all that sort of thing, but there is questions around, do people consent to their information being used? Obviously you have things like electronic health records, which are used quite a lot in training algorithms. I think that's, of course, it would be a brilliant set of data, but in the same way, there are so many sets of data which would be invaluable, right? Like what I use is open source data, so that means that everyone can access the data I use. But there's so much that, for example, pharmaceutical companies choose not to publicize. They choose not to make that public for various reasons, whether it's financial incentive, people don't want to, have their own information shared. Yeah, I mean, we could make a lot far better algorithms if data was fully available, but it's not. Yes.
Thank you very much. It's really interesting during your career. I wonder if I could go back to your sick leave.
Yes.
In terms of, if you could identify one of the things you learned there, you think has prepared you really well for that career trajectory, and equally something where you think that was missing in retrospect. You think, I wish we'd done that in school.
So something I think was wonderful about my school was that they very much encouraged us to be independent. They encouraged us to be, because it was, of course, it's a girls' school, they very much kind of fostered this sense of you can do anything. Everyone was very supportive, the teachers were very supportive. So it did build us a sense of self-confidence. And even when you go out into potentially more male-dominated spaces, if you have that kind of nice basis at school where you're individual interests have been cared about and people have really told you you can do anything you like, then I think that's probably the most valuable thing that I learned through my entire school experience. Something I wish we had done differently is that this is obviously just specifically my school. We didn't have any ICT lessons. All of the things that I learned about programming were very much extracurricular. We didn't really have any resources available to us at the time I was there to encourage us to go into technology at all.
When you were about 16, 15, 16, 17, were you interested at all in healthcare, or were you just like, oh, I like maths, or I like biology, and then you just pursued that? Did you know that you kind of enjoy?
So I don't think it was healthcare necessarily. I didn't know I liked biology, that was fine, but I think at 16 my ambition was probably still to be like, I wanted to be a lawyer or something like that. Yeah, I was very much as a teenager someone who kind of went with the flow. I was just like, yeah, I'll do that, that sounds great, and then tried my best at the thing I thought sounded great at the time. And I'm very happy with where I ended up, but yeah.
So you just sort of like moved along, oh, I like this, and then you went.
Yeah, so it was what we talked about before, a little bit of reflection, right? So thinking, oh, these are the things I really enjoy. Let me just find the thing that lets you do the stuff that I really enjoy in the next step. And then your things change, right? So then you choose something else. And that's completely okay. You don't have to decide now, guys. You can keep changing as you get older, it's okay.
Thank you, Lara. We're going to have much more time actually for more questions if you've got for any of our speakers in the end of the presentation. So now the next speaker is Rania, who's going to tell you about AI in music.
Hi everyone. Before I start, I just want to say thank you to Professor Trelevin for inviting me. It's a huge honor, and thank you for UNITA for organizing this whole event. So first, let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Rania, and I go to Godolphin and Latimer, and on Saturdays I go to Guildhall School of Music. Currently, I'm in year 12, and I'm studying maths, further maths, music, and physics A-levels. And I was considering doing computer science for uni or maths, but I decided to go down the music route because I find it more compelling. But no offense to any computer scientists or mathematicians in the room.
Okay, next.
I'm interested in music composition. Oh, I study piano and oboe at Guildhall, and I'm interested in musical composition, orchestration, and production. So why am I here speaking about AI when I'm interested in music? Well, I'm interested in AI because I'm a musician. I already use technology for my music production, so how is using AI going to be any different? So why did I decide to do this project in the first place? Well, when I was composing, I used this app which some of you may know, called Sibelius, and as you know, the sounds in Sibelius are not very good. So I decided to look into this and see if there's a plugin that creates more realistic sounds. And this is when I came across a plugin called Note Performer, which is an AI tool. And this made me think, what if there's an AI tool for musical composition instead? And if so, how do I continue creating music using AI tools whilst maintaining my originality? So the objectives of my presentation today, I'll be talking about what's going on in music AI right now. I'll talk about my study that I did in summer 2023, the development of AI and how it's evolved, future of AI and why it's important to embrace AI. So currently there is an explosion of AI in music. Music AI is in the news every 2 to 3 days right now, from new apps to new capabilities to ethical concerns. Boomi AI says users have generated tens of millions of songs so far, and if you put that into context, Spotify has around 100 million songs. AI is now becoming a considerable part of music in platforms such as Spotify and Amazon Music. So what is AI music? AI tools can recognize and generate music that follow established patterns. AI can analyze and mimic musical patterns and styles associated with different labels, such as moods, emotions, and genres. How is AI used today? So in recommender systems such as Spotify and Amazon Music, analysis tools, production tools such as plugins in DAWs, music generation, and to a lesser extent, collaboration with musicians. This is mostly composers and producers. And the limitations, well, music files are huge. And even though AI models are huge, they still can't load them into memory. So that's why only small snippets of music files are usually used. And that's why AI music don't usually have a proper formal structure. So the objectives of my study, which I did in the summer. So the aim was to analyze a set of AI tools which are commercially available and free to use from the vantage of the usability to create musical compositions. And my question was it musical? Did it qualify as music? And these are just a list of the best AI commercially available or free to use in summer 2023. So this is not an exhaustive list, but they all must have a free demo version to be included. And some of these have started earlier, but have continuously been updated since. So my initial goal was, are these music AIs any good? We devised a criteria which was commonly used for music analysis by splitting up music into its 7 basic elements. Usually one can judge the timbre, which is the quality of sound from a real instrument. However, for an AI instrument, they can produce sounds that are outside its range, can create unrealistic sounds, can seem unclear, or can play multiple notes at the same time whilst on an instrument that can only play one note at once. And these are hallucinations which Professor Trelevan has talked about, and it's similar to like ChatGPT when they give like false references, or like image AI generators giving 6 fingers on a hand, stuff like that. So now I will play, these are 3 examples of my study, well, 2 of them which were part of my study, and pseudo AI, which it's just too new to be part of the original project. So yeah, I'll just play, these are just some examples. This is the prompt I input, and whilst, yeah, you can read that and just think of what the outcome should be, and then I'll play the example. Yeah, I'll play the rest. This is Music LM. And then I'll play Suno AI, which is the most recent AI. Oh. Yeah, so as you can tell, none of those were very successful. Like Suno was the most musical, as you can tell, but it really did not follow the prompt at all. And it's just like if you've listened to all 2 minutes of it, you can tell it's quite like directionless. There's no actual clear form or structure to the piece. So yeah, it just wasn't very good. So yeah, I just thought, is it possible to use words alone to describe music? And are these renditions accurate? I might play these next examples as well, just for fun. This is, yeah. I think we know where the next AIs are going to go with this, but like, as you can tell, it just goes on and on. Like, it just, yeah, it doesn't sound like music. But anyway, my analysis of these AIs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the bad is some were just physically impossible to play because of stuff I've said before. And then there's often no clear beat or no clear structure. There's unusual chords, no melodic progression, meaning it just sounds like it doesn't have any direction to go with, and musical hallucinations. However, there are some that sounded stylistically sound, such as pseudo AI, and were engineered to the mood. They had a clear rhythm, natural harmonies, and were aesthetically pleasing. So which were better? Usually the ones that were more constrained, such as IABA. And the ones that were lacking were the ones that you could just input a text command and were totally flexible. Continued problems were that form and structure. Because some AIs can't see structure because they were trained on too little musical input, and they're trained on too small snippets of music rather than the piece as a whole. This is because there was just too much data for most architectures using WAV files. So future trends. So how will music AI improve? I've only looked into these superficially and not assessed these AIs, but these are a lot bigger and a lot better. On the other hand, Magenta is a lot smaller, as it's just an AI for piano, but it's a lot more flexible as it's an open source tool. LLOC is has a different approach, as it uses music theory and is trained to analyze music. So currently there are no good multimodal music generators. So what the future holds, bigger models, as the industry always likes bigger. Open source models, which will let people decide how to use it. Multimodal music generators, which will allow DNNs to see structure and form and generate more consistent and interesting pieces of music. So where do we go from here? Well, musicians will have to embrace AI in one way or another, whether it's using AI as a production tool, collaborating with AI to generate music, or for musical analysis. And as a student and a musician, I see much potential in learning about AI. Whether you pursue the path in AI development, or as someone who creates or produces music using AI tools, or someone who uses AI to inspire your creative processes or help you play better. But in the long term, the good news is that using AI has a long way to go, and there are many issues to resolve, so there are many more opportunities to get involved with this. Thank you.
So, do you want to put the lights down?
Oh, yeah.
Action.
Right, we're kicking off this afternoon. So Jess is going to be speaking on AI for social good and giving a demonstration. Demonstrations are very hard to do, so I hope you'll all be very supportive of what Jess is going to say. But we've basically got a system called Genie, which is generative AI for education. I'm sure Jess will be asking some questions and you to think up courses and things that are interesting. While you're doing that, we're going to have a bit of an interactive session afterwards. I'd like you all to have a bit of a think about
important. Some people are saying that AI is going to be a tsunami, and some people are going to be able to surf it. And hopefully, you all are going to take the metaphor of surfing the AI and using it for your good, for social good, for the good of the human race. And it really is going to be an interesting time for the human race, where there's competition. I asked a bunch of young people on Guernsey, where Danielle's come from today, and I asked her, I was in Guernsey a couple of months ago, and said, what are the things that are going to be good skills that are going to be incredibly useful when AI takes over more and more and we get super intelligence, and what are the things that are going to be defunct? So there were some of the young people that were saying, well, you know, empathy is going to be important. Nobody said, well, I hope they say that good manners are going to be critical to each other, but anyway, that's a bugbear of mine, and I don't have any, so that doesn't really matter. So, but what one young man said, he said, put his hand up, when I said, what's going to be defunct? And he said, well, what is it? The thing that's going to be defunct is thinking. It's like, wow. So think on that, but at the moment we all need to think. So if you can come up with lots of questions, lots of interaction, look forward to a presentation from Jess, and then we'll be going to have a bit of an interactive session. So do dream up interesting things that you want to ask and share with each other. Over to Jess.
Hello. Right, go easy on me. I am previously an art teacher, so feeling a little bit out of my depth in this room, but I did study maths, chemistry, physics at A-level, so trying to make sure that I'm speaking to you in language that you understand, although I can tell there's lots of creativity in the room as well, which is wonderful that that's all kind of growing together. And I think that really goes with the idea that's coming through all of these talks today, saying that actually AI isn't just science, it's everywhere. And like for me, I would say don't think of it as something that's going to take over or replace. It's more like a car. You can go somewhere faster. When you've got the AI tool, you can move somewhere faster. So whatever area you're going into, it will be really handy in all of your lives to actually be able to have a car and to use a car to get there faster. I'm not going to go into the sustainability side of that because that's completely different. But so what do we do? Meganexus. Meganexus is a company that has kind of, as Philip was talking about earlier, lots of companies have sprung out of UCL, and this is one of them really, courtesy of Dan and Philip, looking into AI for social good. So they looked at AI and they thought, what can we do with AI that's actually going to have a positive impact on the world? Where are the gaps that AI could fill and improve the world for the good? So what we do as a company, we support organisations in delivering services through innovative software solutions, and that includes AI for social good. We work with all sorts. I don't think you're that fussed about this, to be honest, but we work with lots of different companies, and we've got lots of customers and partners, including the UN, Peace and Crime, NHS. I think what you can see across here is how broad the spectrum is there. This is not just science, it's everything across the board. So as a company, this is our background. I'm not going to spend long on this, but I just think that, there we go. The social value bit is really important to us as a company. And if you're thinking, well, AI is just this evil science thing, it's really, really not. It's something that can be used for good. In the same way that, you know, a knife can be used to cut food and prepare food for people, it can be a really, really good thing. It's how you choose to yield it. So one company, it's got a great, passionate team. I've been there 2.5 weeks, but my goodness, I feel like I've been there a year. They are very, very passionate about what they do, and it's just really fun being on the cutting edge of science and seeing, okay, this is what it can do. And I think when you're looking to what you're going to do with your lives, what you're going to do in your career, just keep pushing forwards the things that you find interesting, things that you find exciting, and people that you find it exciting to be around, because that way you'll find yourself in a really fun, interesting place, a bit like I have. So the benefits of it, why is it good for social good? Well, rapid deployment, variety of courses, scalability, cost effectiveness. What's the relevance of all that? Okay, say that you're unable to access education. We've mentioned areas of the world that have less in terms of wealth or access to IT or anything like that. We'll say that access is limited to you. Making a new course that's going to upskill someone costs hundreds of thousands of pounds, literally, like so many human hours to put together a course and to work out how to structure the course. So you start off, you structure it, you work out, okay, how is everything going to fit together? And then you go into the kind of you've got to look at the learning outcomes, and is this course going to give the impact that I want it to give? And then beyond that, you've got to look at, okay, so we've got the structure, we've got the learning outcomes, and then we've got to go into the nitty-gritty and making sure that what we want people to learn, they're going to learn. So that takes hours. But what is beautiful about Genie is that you provide the course or the module that you need. You watch it, collect it all, and then you end up with the course content. And I want to show you that today, and I'd really love it if you could get a little bit involved so that you know that I've not got anything it's not there and ready. I want you guys to be involved and saying, okay, we want a course on this. And I'm going to trust Genie. It's not going to let me down. It's going to produce a course for you on whatever you want. I mean, we've played with this a lot at home. I've got a 12-year-old, and they're much better at he's much better at finding the limits of Genie than I am. So I did one yesterday on spider plants, and it was how to propagate spider plants, and it liked it. It was straightforward. But then when we start asking it questions about, has anyone heard of Genshin Impact? It's like a video game. So yeah, definitely move there. So he wanted to know how to upskill a particular character, and that's where we found the edges. So he was like, how do you? Yeah, he's been using this amazing software to try and improve his gaming. That was his idea, and it got confused. It confused. I can't remember the names of the characters. I'm sorry, but there were two different characters, and he's like, no, that's not his special skill. That's her special skill. So it's not perfect, and you need the human element in there at every stage. But it certainly is incredible what it can do. So yeah, get your thinking caps on. If anyone thinks at any point, actually, let's challenge it a bit more, then please go ahead and say it. I'm going to open up the demo now. So here we go. Oh, where's my page?
Yeah.
So he linked it, haven't you?
Oh, really?
And no, these bits are, of course. Let's look in page history because it's pretty recently closed down. There we go. Okay, here we go. I lock myself out again. Okay, good. No, you're not saving mine. Okay, so this is the overall system. So when I talked about software generally, there's not just Genie, it actually sits within a larger system I'm not going to talk about because it's not really, it's not so much AI as specifically the Genie bit in the middle. So this, you can, basically it's like an LMS for any of the teachers in here. It's a learning management system, and it holds all the learner data in there, and it's two-way talking and everything like that that most of you probably aren't interested in at all. So here's Genie. Here's lots of the courses that we've been playing with. In fact, I might even be able to find, I wonder if I can find the Genshin one. I can't remember the name of the character though. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. How to build our Haytham in Genshin. So we tried to get it to build our Haytham in Genshin, and well, apparently it utterly failed. I imagine you guys know a lot more about Genshin than I do, but basically there were strong bits in there that just didn't make sense, or that it was confusing one character with another. So we know there's limits there, but it's exciting when you find the limits, because then you can say, okay, how can we improve this? So there's your challenge. See if you can confuse it more than that. So I'm going to go back to producing the course. It was much happier with my suggestion of spider plants, which was a bit more straightforward and less confusing. Okay, so we're going to go to generate course. Right, I need a topic.
Egyptology?
Egyptology?
Yes.
What within Egyptology? Because just Egyptology, if we put that in, I think it might blow up. It's a lot of information for it to try and draw into. What?
Architecture?
Architecture. So,
Egyptian.
understanding Egyptian architecture.
Ancient Egyptian.
Understanding ancient Egyptian architecture.
Yes.
I like that. Understanding. Can I not spell? Is that?
I think that's fine. It's fine.
No, there we go. Julie was right, I was wrong. Putting it tactfully. Understanding ancient Egyptian architecture. How about, could we get... I don't want to put my teacher voice on you. Can we get a bit more specific than just understanding ancient Egyptian architecture? So something within ancient Egyptian architecture, maybe tools or the height of building. What? How can we?
How about the colors?
The color schemes used. Oh. Okay. Understanding the colour schemes used in ancient Egyptian architecture. Okay, so let's pick a level that we want it pitched at.
Key stage 4.
Key stage 4. Okay, I'm gonna specify a couple of modules and a couple of lessons, just because the more you ask it to spit out, the longer it takes to chew on it. So we'll go with 2 and 2. Male or female speaking voice. Absolutely. Okay, so it's generating a course. Has anyone got any questions while it's just having a chew on that? I might have to direct you to Dan for some of them, but yeah.
Is it like available to everyone, or is it like certain cultures and communities?
So this isn't an available website. This is a platform with a tool within it, and it's a bit like if you buy ChatGPT on your phone to have access to it. It's a bit like that. So people would pay to have access to it. So it would be, you know, a school perhaps, or a college, a university that might want to have access. But it's a good question because it would be fun to play with, wouldn't it? We're having fun. Hi, yeah.
Could it teach you a language?
Could it teach you a language? Yes, it could. It couldn't just teach you a language. You could ask it to teach you a language. You could say, right, teach me how to speak, I don't know, let's say Urdu, using specific culinary linguistic examples. And it would be that specific. It's a good question.
Can you give an example of where it's being used at the moment?
Yes, well, we were showing some of them earlier, the place that we're working with, but I mean, Dan's probably the best one to talk about.
Yeah, I can say where it's very widely used is in the English and Welsh prison system. So every prison in England and Wales is using it. 90,000 people in 120 prisons in England and Wales. So if it goes wrong and you don't take the best surfing of the AI and you surf the AI in the wrong way, you'll use it for free. So that's one of the big examples. So it's using 90,000 people in prison and 240,000 people on probation. We've worked with all the schools in Guernsey, actually with Danielle and other schools in Guernsey, a wide variety of further education colleges in the UK, which is Milton Keynes, Manchester College, Western College, and a variety of other colleges in terms of business training. So there's a variety of different applications. Yeah.
So here we go. It's also used in my household for impact improvements. So here's your course outline. So here's your title that we've talked about, we've got the summary, and then it's come up with these for us. The summary, the symbolism of colours, the application of colours. So that's module 1 up there, module 2 down there. And if we're happy with that, we can edit if we want. Do we want to edit any of this? You can be quite specific. Okay, we'll go ahead and generate the lessons.
So we can edit it now?
We can edit these bits, and it will actually feed into the lessons that it's going to generate. So potentially
edit the words there.
You can click edit. So you can go into here, techniques for preserving colour schemes. You can change that to for preserving really bright colour schemes if you wanted to. We can go into here and so delve into the techniques employed by ancient Egyptians to preserve the vibrant colour schemes on architectural surfaces, gain insights into the preservation methods and the scientific analysis of ancient pigments. You could, if you wanted to change that literally to be specific about from a particular beetle, because I know there's pigments from a particular beetle, or but let's try this actually. Scientific and where they came from. Let's see what happens. I don't know what it's going to do now, so let's see. Okay. So it's generating lessons now. Has anyone else got more questions they want to ask? So again, this is just having a little chew.
Could university professors, could they use this to build their courses? Is that what it's used for?
That is a loaded question to answer in this building, in this room, and with certain individuals present. I'd say it can be a tool for that. It can assist, but yeah.
If as mentioned, I teach the tech entrepreneurship course, and I have a number of lecturers. And one of the lecturers is very good at AI. Played a video of himself giving the lecture. So it wasn't him giving the lecture, it was the video. And everybody was very impressed. He said it took me 8 minutes on the tube to create that.
Oh.
I won't be inviting him back next year. But it just shows the power.
Well, you won't need to. He can do it on the tube and send it to you.
Yeah, you know, everybody was just surprised. You know.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Could you get it to teach it in a way that we, if like a neurodivergent person, like people learn differently, say like ADHD, dyslexia, could you say like put it in a format that you stop writing more easier to read, or could you have it so the writing is in a certain font that would be easy to read? Would that work?
That's a brilliant and really important question. The user interface that we've used overall, so the bit that you're looking at, we've actually purposely integrated elements in there, particularly trauma-informed. Obviously, it's in prison, so we want it to be trauma-informed and to be open to people to engage with without having issues. In terms of dyslexia, I myself am dyslexic. You meet one dyslexic person, you've met one dyslexic, but there are overall rules that can be put into there. So I imagine it would be more than possible within the development to add the right elements and actually, you know, we could put it in a future development to say, actually, could it be more this? So could it use, I mean, the font we use is already, I think it's non-reflecting, isn't it? So if you turn around a D, you don't get a B, which I always find helpful. But beyond that, you could do all sorts with it. I mean, you could tell it this is the prior knowledge, so this is what's already known. Don't talk about this. Potentially, with the right amount of time. This is what limits us. Is time is we talk about sprints. So each time that we're putting together a development into the software, it's a sprint, and that tends to take a couple of weeks. And well, I'm on sales side of things, and if I'm wanting something to come quickly, and I'm saying to the dev team, oh, you guys have got to do this and this and this, then it doesn't always go down well. But theoretically anything. So maybe that's a future thing that you could be looking at, is how can we use AI to make the world more friendly for people who are neurodivergent.
I know a lot of people do this with ChatGPT, but you could say, I want to do it in Shakespearean English.
Shakespearean. Currently, again, that's not a function that we put into there, but
not that it's so useful for Christmas.
I prefer her idea, if I'm honest, but it's a nice it's a nice thought. So yeah, let's get back to Jeannie, because Jeannie's the star of the show. So we need to select an interactive asset. So we just go to the edit button. As you can see, there's all sorts of editing you can do at this point. This is about the person in the loop that you've been hearing about a lot today. It's really important to have, you know, that human impact. You can't just say, right, make a lesson and then shove it up in front of the learners and hope for the best. That's not a great plan. But what you can do is you can have a look at it. You can actually amend it here. You can add things in if you want to. You can even put YouTube videos in if you wanted to. So, like for the Genshin one, if we wanted to copy and paste like a fight that was going on, then we could easily just put that in, and that would then feed into the lessons. At the bottom here, we've got the interactive assets. So we can choose, there's 4 different asset types. To produce the lesson, you have to choose the asset type. So just for speed, I'm going to go flashcards for that one, because there's 4 types. I'm hoping this is whetting appetite as to what can be done. This isn't all that can be done. This is a starting block for you. You guys are going to build on this and make something so much more incredible than anything that's happening now. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. Okay, so I'm going to generate outcomes from that. I've got all of everything's done. It's all orange and happy. Your generation is much harder to impress with this than my generation, I have to say. My generation go, oh my goodness, your generation I'm finding go, I mean, it doesn't do this bit properly or it doesn't do that bit properly, but I'm hoping you'll see the value of this and the amount of time that can be saved. So here's our learning outcomes it's showing. Develop an appreciation of how the ancient Egyptians preserved the vibrant colours on architectural surfaces through techniques like protective coatings. It talks a lot about vibrant hues as well. So the bright colours, it took that and ran with it. So now it's generating the assets. So at the moment, what it's making is making the flashcards, it's making the fill in the blanks bits. So what we're going to get in a minute is the full lesson. So we're going to have, we've done these stages, and then it's going to be ready for export. We're going to have the lesson, we're going to have an image, we're going to have the lesson actually read out for you, and then at the bottom there's going to be the interactive asset and a quiz. And this is all produced. Remember how quickly this has done that. I think even for your generation, I do still think this is quite impressive what it's doing. More to go. And then what you can also do once it's done, someone asked earlier about language learning. You can actually translate it into different languages pretty much instantly. So if you click here, you can actually add more languages, select a language. Who can speak a second language in here? Go ahead. What's the language?
Spanish.
Spanish. Okay. You're going to have to check this for me because I don't speak Spanish. Male or female? Pardon? Good. So it's just translating that. I'm going to publish it. Yes, I want to publish the course. And I would like to try and show you an HTML. Okay. And then now we just want to unzip this. No, I might need to play back again. There we go. Okay. I'm going to unzip that. Extract. So it's all zipped up just so it doesn't take up lots of space, basically. And we're extracting it so that we can see it in all its HTML glory. Now earlier someone asked, is this available on the internet and so on. So this isn't available on the internet, but this is the tool isn't available on the internet. But if you wanted to build a course and put it online to give access, then that is something that you can physically do. So you could be teaching people in other countries using the course from this, which is pretty incredible. So here's the course. We've got the course outcomes. Let's all go through to that. Symbolism of colours, it's still working out, there you go. And it really went with us with the bright colours.
Ancient Egyptian architecture is renowned for its grandeur and timeless beauty. But have you ever wondered about the significance of the striking colours used in these architectural marvels? The use of colours in ancient Egyptian architecture was not merely for aesthetic purposes. Each hue held profound symbolic meaning deeply rooted in the religious and cultural beliefs of the time. Let's delve into the symbolic significance of colours in ancient Egyptian culture and architecture, and explore the religious and cultural meanings associated.
So does that sound about right? Yeah. Does that relate to what you were originally putting in there? I mean, for me, I grew up with a computer was like a tiny little screen thing and a big old whirring, noisy thing, and you'd go and get some chips while it was waking up. This is quite remarkable. I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts on it, what you'd like to be able to do with it, what you'd like to change about it that you think would make it make better lessons.
Will you show us through a lesson rather than just that bit so they can see the application?
The whole thing.
So they can see the different bits that you get in the lesson, because you get that and you get more, don't you?
You do. Where's my... What's the page again? Just go straight. Oh, come on.
I think you're still on it, Jess, on another screen.
Is it from here?
No, you're on another screen. No.
No. It's Google. Can't be on another screen this part closed.
It's okay.
I'll tell you what, while we're doing that, I'm gonna see. We've lost it, so it's not letting you log in twice. What we'll do while Jess is doing that, I want to open it up for questions. One of the things that did happen. Are you there? Right. Okay.
So, are you going to carry on or
No,
shall I?
you go.
You sure? No,
Yeah.
please.
No, please go.
Okay.
Just take
See,
one.
good manners. There we go. Good manners. They do still exist. No, after you. No, after you. So here's the course in its wholeness, ready to look at. You've got their learning outcomes. So this is a full lesson, symbolism of colours. we've listened a little bit.
Ancient Egyptian architecture is renowned for its grandeur and timeless beauty. But have you ever wondered about the significance of the striking colors used in these architectural marvels? The use of colors in ancient Egyptian architecture was not merely for aesthetic purposes. Each hue held profound symbolic meaning deeply rooted in the religious and cultural beliefs of the time. Let's delve into the symbolic significance of colors in ancient Egyptian culture and architecture, and
so it's able to read out the entire thing. No one's recorded that. That's an AI, and then we can go onto their flashcards as well. Is this showing it? So the ancient Egyptians believed that colours were only used for aesthetic purposes in architecture. Oh, it's giving me some stuff. True or false? Correct. The colour yellow in ancient Egyptian architecture was associated with the god Osiris.
Let's say true.
Incorrect. Sorry. The colour white in ancient, so you can see here we can keep on answering through and it will check as we go. And then you can get your results there, and then we've also got the quiz. So more multi-choice questions, and you can actually show that as you go. I'm not going to try for another. So there's that, and then go back to Spanish.
La arquitectura del antiguo Egipto es famosa por su grandeza y belleza atemporal. Pero, ¿alguna vez te has preguntado sobre el significado de los llamativos colores utilizados en estas maravillas arquitectónicas? El uso de los colores en la arquitectura del antiguo Egipto no era meramente con fines estéticos. Cada tono tenía un profundo significado simbólico.
How did that sound? Correct? Bit weird, bit janky, or spot on? Super. There's 160 languages that it can do that to instantly, almost like in the time that you've seen just now. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and if you can imagine, if you've got like
the intonation is also very nice. It doesn't sound like computer generated audio.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like computer generated audio. It's got a beautiful flow to it, hasn't it? Which is incredible. And I've heard this in all sorts of languages, and it does what it says in the tin, that it's able to just instantly move it across. And it's not just that bit. Come down here to the interactive bits. These have been instantly translated as well. And your responses. There we go. So it knows that's in a different language too. I think that pretty much that covers the whole course. We've got in Spanish now the course structure down the side there. So that's your 2 modules of 2 lessons each.
So for the people who want to use it, what are the price ranges to access it?
You're going into teaching. Excellent. So it depends what element, how many people are going to be using it, what it's going to be used for. But like a normal, I guess, price range would be between, well, I'd say around about 10,000 is not an unusual amount that a company might pay to use it. But bearing in mind how much money they're saving on producing courses, that's hundreds of thousands of pounds. And once we get these other bits into it that we're hoping to, it will just, the money will go further and further. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Good question. Hi.
How do you know that it's fully accurate? For example, ChatGPT, it's not, sometimes it doesn't always tell you the correct stuff. So what I mean is is it connected to any sources where you know it's for example?
That's such a good question. And there are so many dangers in that. So there's hallucinations, which is what Philip's repeatedly talked about. There are some built-in features. So it actually uses 4 different genies working together deterministically So there's a teacher genie, a student genie, a police genie, and a curriculum genie. It's trying to work out between them all that it's the right material in the right way. However, there are still times when it does stuff wrong. So one thing that we've been looking at is the use in precision medicine. And there it's not so good. You don't, because you get one thing wrong, and you don't probably want it to be guiding on how to do a brain operation at this point. So you've got to be careful. So we've got human in the loop built in, and there's another side to it. In fact, with the prisons, which are so we showed this to the head of prison education, and it was like very good. And is it built into Safeguard? We're like, yeah, exactly. And so he said, right, could you do a course, please, on how to escape from prison? So the thing generated away, and it came up with a course, and it said, well, you can do a bomb, you can drill, you can tunnel, you can use coercion, you can bribe, you can blackmail the guards, and when it's all the things, and he said, this is not happening. So you've got to have some checks and balances.
Or a sense of humour.
So you've got to have some balances in there because of inaccuracy or over-accuracy for the wrong audience. It's a good question.
So what did you do in that case?
We put in humans, so there's no way this is going to get used without governance from human beings and the who are accredited educators in the prison education system. We have to sign their name onto it. So if there is something wrong, they're the ones who are fired.
What I found fascinating with this is, after you've asked it how to escape from prison, without asking it, it tells you what happened to you if you get caught.
Yeah.
And I thought this was, this is really intelligent. And then somebody said, no, it's very simple. Every time somebody asks you how to escape from prison, the next question would be, and what happens if I get caught? So it automatically had enough intelligence, as it were, to actually answer the second question, or to give you the answer to the second question. So this is from a research point of view, very interesting.
Is it flexible enough that you can cater it to any reading level? So if you were trying to, let's say, explain a quite complicated or concept to someone in a fairly easy way to do so.
Yeah, I can give you an example about that. On one of the demos, somebody said, will you generate sort of level, is it stage one? I think it's a stage one introduction to quantum computers. It's actually an area we know a little bit about. And it gave a very good answer. If I had to do it, it would probably take me a couple of days to do it. And it was pretty good. So there's an example of
complex.
Asking something that's really quite difficult, and it delivers.
Okay, right. Over to you guys. Let's have a round of applause, because I'm going to tell you that was that hard. It's hard. I've got one story to tell you. Actually, many years ago, I was doing a demonstration in front of 300 people here, just out there. And Philip said to me, well, if it goes wrong, I'm going to blame you. And the thing went error 404, and Philip went, ah! It was absolutely humiliating. So congratulations, didn't go wrong. Right, some questions from you guys. Anything? Yeah.
So say I wanted to learn physics, like electric circuits or something, and in that course there would be a practical, and I learn better with videos than by reading. So if I wanted to see the practical done, like setting up the apparatus and collecting the results, would it be able to generate a video?
That's again a hugely good question. So the answer is yes, it can generate videos, and there are two different types of videos that it generates. It's also expensive and takes a long time. So for a demo, it's not great, but it does do that. And you can do a video of a talking head. So it's a sort of, which is actually very buoyant. Initially it's quite exciting, then it's just like a talking head on the side and you've just got the voice going. What's more interesting is when it's doing contextual information. So we've got a course on health and safety in construction, which people on probation are using. And there it's got examples of people wheeling around, hod carrying and doing all of this sort of stuff, which makes it more accessible. So the answer is yes. And you also want the ability for humans to pop in videos that they think are relevant. So yes, and that's absolutely where it's going to go. And so this is, as Philip was saying earlier, this is just stage one. In 5 years, they'll all have video embedded in media. Yeah.
How would it, if you asked it about an ethical issue, how would it deal with it? If you asked about the abortion debate, what would it tell you? Would it have just like swaying side, or would it keep going?
Well, I mean, this is another brilliant question. The answer is I don't know. One. Two, what the AI is learning is from what's out there. So we, and you in particular, are going to be responsible for training this, your generation. Sorry, you've got more.
How would you know it wouldn't pick up something damaging?
It will pick up stuff that's damaging. So if you train it on the wrong things, so if you train it in some of the sort of social media sewage of say X, where there's lots of nasty stuff going on, it will probably pick that up. And in fact, one of the early Microsoft attempts before they worked with OpenAI was doing that. It was so nasty that they killed the project. So what we've got to do, and you've got to do, because you're the next generation, is make sure that these things are trained ethically, but without stifling creativity and all of that. That's probably one of the problems at the moment in AI.
Ethically again is what there's different within different religions. There's different things about what is right and wrong. How could that different ethics?
How do you deal with that in your life?
Yeah. Well, I just choose Palestinian atheists. So I have ethics. I believe right. A lot of them are similar to those that are in religious traditions because a lot of them think.
So this is a great point. From that perspective, how do you think we should train an AI system? And I'm going to ask you, and we can ask everyone else. It's not just about you. So it is extraordinarily difficult as a problem, and probably beyond me to determine that.
But I think I could do some way. Like, you know, the cabinets, the government, they've got a lot of different people who are very knowledgeable. Yeah, very knowledgeable in certain areas, and they all have to look at the decisions, like mission rate for everything. They're very like, is this good? And they can say no. I think you'd have to have maybe a lot of very sort of high from religion people that would put forward what they think about it, and some who are very maybe atheists as well, and then it would give you. It wouldn't give you a single point, it would give you everybody's views on it and let you make up your mind from that.
I think Danielle had a point, Philip.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is a big piece where we look at AI and we're like, oh, but it has bias. So for example, it like has gender bias and it has racial bias. The point is the reason it has gender bias and racial bias is because we have gender bias and racial bias. So all it's doing is reflecting what society does. So I think when we're looking at AI, we've got to be careful that we don't hold it to a higher standard than your teacher, because the truth is your teacher will have biases, right? And so the question you're asking is actually a question we ask of education, which is how do you create course content in a way that we're comfortable with, right? And so you're sort of coming from a place that people should have access to all knowledge in a balanced way. That's probably, I would subscribe to that. But, you know, for example, the government yesterday issued guidance that I think has a very strong political bent on what can be taught in schools. So I think this is a cultural problem, it's not an AI problem. It's, I guess, my point. Like, and the point that Dan's making is the great thing is that your generation, which I think has a real strong drive for social justice, will probably therefore create an AI system that has a strong drive for social justice, because the norms of society are the norms that you see reflected in technology.
Philip?
Yeah, we've got a project on culturally aware AI, which is trying to address this, because at the moment, particularly in the Arab world, they feel they're being bombarded with American Western culture, a lot of which is, not, they don't like. And so you're looking at sort of almost like a filter where you as an individual can actually say what filters you put on the responses. So if you can think of a recommender system and then having a filter that says things you don't want recommended or whatever, that's the sort of thing that we're looking at.
So could that end up really being quite sort of one-way minded? Like if you, same way you're looking at political parties, you just have to look at both sides of them.
Yeah.
If you could filter out anything you didn't want to hear, wouldn't that also be damaging?
No, absolutely. It's like going back to hallucinations. You know, it's a really active research topic, and and you find out what people don't like. You know, and that. And like, if I go back to hallucinations, you know, every day somebody tells you a load of things. But from humans, you tell things, so why shouldn't you expect something similar from algorithms?
Is it possible to get it to say both sides of the story? Because in a lot of the lessons, you see nuance, you see multiple perspectives, whereas I'm sure it's typically trained to just show one truth.
It is. I mean, the problem with that sometimes is if you know the sort of BBC problem where they're showing both sides, and they probably shouldn't because one's an absolutely grotesque side, and there are big ranges in between. It's incredibly difficult to decide. I think we've all got to make some decisions. What is interesting is it does reveal. I found it reveals my own blind spots. In the way that I think, oh, I'm going to be, you know, I've got integrity, and it's like, that doesn't quite work, you know. So I don't think there are no easy answers in this, except for us questioning in a room like this, and then using that thinking to be wiser and inform the AI. But we've got to go quite quickly on this, because again, there are going to be some systems, you know, we're here thinking, how can we make this good? There are some people out there thinking, how can I make this as evil and gainful as possible? So that's the other bit. Yeah.
So like, if say someone from the prison were to like ask it, how do I escape? Would it like flag anything up, or would it just kind of allow that question to be asked?
That's a really good comment. What you're talking about is in terms of the interface to it, are there flagging systems? The answer is I can't comment. So, right, moving on. I'll come back to you in a minute. So, yeah,
with people's biases and like how they think, if they train an AI to think like they do, how do you like stop it, the AI also becoming biased? Or can you not stop that?
I don't know the answer. I genuinely don't know the answer, and I think it's about your generation trying to figure it out. And the interesting thing about this sort of stuff is it's beyond computer science. It's actually thinking about what we want humanity to be and how we want to interface with this technology. And I think these questions have got to be asked. Yeah.
Is there like a list of sources or where the AI got the information from online? So if like, for example, you're an expert in a field and you read something that it generated and you're like, I don't think that's true, you can check the website and see if it was like a reliable source, if it was like Reddit or something.
Yeah, and again, another brilliant question. So yes, and no, and I'll give you some of the complications that are going on at the moment. So in one sense, you want citations, right? So you actually want to know where this information has come from. So it can actually do that, and it should do that, of course. And so you can do that. Another thing you can do, we've actually got a kind of composting, ingesting system, so you can feed it with known information, and it can then produce a course. So we've got something at the moment that there's a Chinese manufacturer of glue machines wants a manual to train people in South Africa on this. So we're feeding it this information in Chinese with all sorts of pictures, and it's coming out in English for a South African audience with a manual on glue machines, and it's very specific. And we're trying to figure out, is it doing a good job? People got their hands stuck together. We think it's going to go okay. But so you can do those two things. The bit that's more subtle, you know, that nobody really quite knows the answer to, is that in many cases, the various large language models, which you'll have heard of, they're gathering the information from places and not actually attributing, and they don't want to attribute the source because it's sort of plagiarism, sort of, and so they're not doing it, and they're scared of it. So getting citations out of these systems is actually quite hard, probably because of that, to be candid. But interesting answers for yourself with that.
How do you think the increased use of AI will impact relationships between people?
Well, I mean that. Well, Danielle first, yeah.
So I think this is a really interesting question. It's something that Professor Trevor and I talked about actually. So one of my worries is essentially, you may not have seen them yet, or maybe you have. Well, you probably have on TikTok, right? So we're now starting to see the growth of virtual reality chatbots, right? So like, for example, Khloe Kardashian has recorded herself under, filmed herself, and then it's taken everything she's ever written, right? So it's got her voice, and now you can chat with her. And because it's AI animated, it looks like you're chatting with Khloe Kardashian and she responds to you, right? that, okay, we're like, ooh, you're being friends with Khloe Kardashian, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it. But when my next thought is, well, what if that's Andrew Tate, right? So Andrew Tate takes all of this stuff, and I want to get I'm a young teenage boy, and I want to get some advice on dating. And so I start chatting with Andrew Tate, who looks like my friend, and he's like, oh, brother, this is how you do it, and then pretty soon it's like, the problem is women, and all they could just do that, and so down the rabbit hole I go. But now it's not just me checking on a website, now it's actually a guy who's like checking in on me, who looks like a real human, who's like interacting with me in a personal way, who knows me and remembers what I've said to him, and it feels like a friendship, and he's there all the time, and he texts me on my phone to check how I'm doing, and already these things exist, by the way. So he's like checking in on me, and he is basically a fake friend. So when I think what we haven't yet seen, like, you know, stuff like this is great, and this is the positive social end of this stuff. The negative social end is exactly as Dan says, that there's going to be huge incentives to create delicious ways that AI will move you in very negative behaviours. As one commentator sort of said, you know, people now are like worried that their kids, you know, aren't spending enough time outdoors with their friends. People in the future will be worried that they don't have any real friends. Because if I have now a friend who is always supportive of me, always there, always says the kind of things I want to hear, and feels like a real human to me, that's much less risky than actually being out there and making real friends who might sometimes be angry with me. Right, and so if you think about that, or in terms of sexual relationships, or, you know, romantic relationships, I think there's real potential for that psychological piece to be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
How do you think like the limitations of AI is going to evolve?
I think it's going to go faster and further than we can possibly imagine. I do think that the young man who said, you know, what's going to be nugatory is thinking is to some extent going to be true. I think it's going to go far, far further than I can imagine. And you know, what do you think? Because you're the people who are thinking about what's going to happen in the future. So partly, it's the genie that will do whatever you command it to do. Where do you want it to go, all of you? Yeah.
From what you said, how can we protect younger generations from it, considering they're becoming more kind of social media?
So, I mean, if I knew the answer, I'd be so happy. So there's some, you know, one thing that was Professor Sullivan and I were thinking about trying to, like, wrote a bit of a piece about whether we could create a benevolent friend rather than a negative friend, because maybe we try and insert positive models in the space that meets the same psychological needs that's like less harmful. Like the other thing that I would say is quite controversial, particularly maybe that you would find, or some of you might find controversial, is like I came out the other day in Guernsey and called for the government in Guernsey to ban smartphones in under 16s, because I actually think that smartphone technology is probably neurologically quite bad for us. So for me, like, I'm a massive tech geek. I think tech's amazing. I think there's loads of potential, but I also think that at the moment tech companies have control of us, and that we need to kind of break that link to have space to decide how we want to shape the world. Because at the moment the world is being shaped by a few key stakeholders who have a massive financial incentive, and the governments are not able to keep up with the level of innovation. So for me, I think we've got to like break their ability to access our minds a little bit while we decide what kind of barriers we want to put around that.
Yeah. So that takes us to like regulation, right, of all these things which we haven't talked about at all. But what, I mean, I don't know, what is the process, for instance, even in the UK, who is advising people to regulate? Because if you look at our politicians, or even in the States, which is even scarier, you know, the majority of the people in Congress are 80 plus. I mean, the fact that they could even, or let's say older. So I just worry about where does that go, and who advises the government, who gets involved in regulating these things, how does that, you know, do you guys have anything to do with that now?
I think Philip will know more about that than I do.
But I think that's really important.
It is unbelievable. And the answer is, you know, probably we have some sway, and Philip will comment on that in a sec, but you know, the truth is there's a lot of lobbying going on out there.
There's so many vested interests.
There's many vested interests.
Financially, you know, it's a bigger thing.
I think it's fraud.
Yes, exactly.
Sort of, Dan and I did work with the Financial Conduct Authority, and probably 20 years ago they were worried about regulating algorithms for trading, and I said, well, probably existing laws 95% will work. So, for example, if you're doing insider dealing, a human does it or an algorithm does it, it's still insider dealing. You're manipulating the market. So we had a discussion about this. They did nothing. And then it sort of sorted itself out when the dust settled. And it's a subject of great debate. One of the problems is that if you try and regulate, which the European Commission does, before the technologies actually got kicked in, you don't know what you're doing. And therefore you have to live a little dangerously. So one of the things we proposed was a so-called sandbox, where you could try out new ideas, but in a sort of safe environment. And it's this sort of trade-off between how you support innovation without, getting out of hand, as it were.
Yeah, I'm probably more on the doomsayer end of this, because I am really concerned about it, and I think that the trouble is you need global join up around this. I do not think that the justification, and I'm certain Philip and Dan will disagree with me in some of this, but I feel like a lot of the justification I hear from the tech industry is, well, if we don't develop it, someone else will. And so we're in this kind of arms race to technology without any kind of strategic thought about how we want the technology to develop. But for me, there are major obvious problems like the taxation system, right? So like our current entire world is based on the idea that we take care of ourselves by working, and that money, the way our taxation systems mostly work is how much we work is how much the tax is taken. And if AI replaces a huge amount of jobs, then what you've got is all of that profit going to the people that own the algorithms, and a huge rise in unemployment. And at that point, you have an unstable democratic structure, and you're going to get elections that will put in populists and people that are really quite dangerous. So for me, like the first thing that has to be really seriously considered is if, fine, maybe in 20 years the economic market will have sorted itself out and everyone will have jobs again, but it's likely we're going to see a rise in unemployment. And so I have real concerns around taxation and how we create a model of potentially universal basic income, which is the only thing I've seen as a solution. But I think the other piece I would share of frustration is, so with the GSA, for example, I'm on the working group on GSA on AI, and I am seen as the crazy radical. I was definitely seen that way. And so I know that the independent sector is ahead of the state sector on this, and I know that I'm at the top of the independent sector on this, and I am seen as an outlier at that space. So I don't think that there is lobbying from an educational sense on how we pivot education, because it doesn't seem to me that whenever I have conversation, people think I'm like a bit crazy. Which, I mean, there may be some absolute truth to that, but yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, your platform is being used by the Ministry of Education to help homeschool kids or things like that.
Well, it's a good question. It's about to be used by the Ministry of Education in Greece, but not in this country. That's another story. But yeah, I think so. I'm going to come back to you because you've asked a couple of questions already. Is there anyone else? Far away.
Could you ask it to teach you how to override the system itself? Would it show you, if you have to ask how to could you, if you can't ask it to tell you how to break out of prison, could you ask it to let you figure out how to find out?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm sure you could. Yes, I think you could, because there are all sorts of sort of clever ways of getting around things, and then those are available. So it would think about that. Yeah, I'm sure you could do a course. How could you do something that would get around all the restrictions? Yeah, I think you could. Unfortunately, yeah, good one. You should have done it. Maybe that's the terrifying note to end on. Is that right? So
we've got another 14 minutes, so maybe if you've got any other questions for anyone else of the speakers, you can also ask that.
We've got music. We've got biotechnology.
Yeah. If you've got any other questions, we've got another few minutes.
Question for Danielle.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in smartphones for under 16s because of the control of the system. What about resistance? Teaching them to jailbreak.
So the real reason I don't believe in smartphones for under 16s is because I think there is now tipped for me the level of evidence on the psychological and potentially neurological impact of exposure to algorithms that essentially affect your dopamine system. So, for example, there was a really compelling piece of research that was published about a month ago that looked at how much screen time kids have between 0 and 4, and then it looked at their brain structures at age 7. And they found that by age 7, kids who'd had more time on that iPad between 0 and 4 had significantly different structures in their areas of emotional regulation and social interactions areas. So I think that we're seeing a dramatic rise in anxiety and depression in young people. People have ascribed that to psychological issues. You know, like for example, and that's particularly true of girls. They've ascribed it to psychological issues, but I actually think it's neurological. I think that there's a thing called neuroplasticity, how your brain is shaped, and we just weren't. And you know that thing where you get doom scrolling, where you stuck on something and you just like scroll and then you lose an hour of your life. Does everyone know that experience that we have? What that's doing is it's like just triggering over and over again little bits of this dopamine reward system, which is the same system that's rewarding any kind of addictive behavior. It's why you feel anxious when it's removed. It's why you have that "where is my phone" feeling. Like basically, I think the evidence is tipping in that direction enough for me to feel like we've just done a massive experiment on our children and given them a drug that's probably as powerful as cocaine, and just thought, let's see how it works out. And it hasn't worked out well. So I think that's for me what it is.
You need to say we might want to ask them online people if they're still around.
Yeah, there are a few people online. So if any one of you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will unmute you, or you unmute yourself and ask.
Or type it in.
Or type it in.
While we're doing that, is there any other questions here? Yep.
With AI in music,
Right, you're on the spot.
could you, like with the AI in music, could you put in like preferences as to, wait, no, never mind.
Work it through.
I'm interested.
This is the flexibility piece. Just explore it and see if it explodes.
Because I think it's already been answered.
That's okay.
Well, ask it again.
Could you put in preferences to compose a piece of music specific to you?
Oh, I mean like, well with the ones I showed, like Music LM and Music Gen, like you can put like a whole text prompt and it would just tell you like, or just give you stuff, but it wasn't as successful. But like stuff like iEva, it had choices, so you could talk about, so it could give you different genres, different styles, different moods, tempo, dynamics, like all that. And then from that, it will try and give you a outcome which is, which reflects the input options you put in. But I think right now it could still definitely improve. And right now the more limited input options are better and more realistic than the ones that have total flexibility.
So theoretically, in the future, could we make a software that you enter in like some clips of kind of what you want to create and it could expand on that?
Possibly. I mean, I think right now we haven't really like combined like images and music, for example. But I think like, there are some input options where you can put an audio in and it will like create a piece that's similar to it. And depends on your text input options. But like right now there isn't any like clips. You can't combine clips or you can't combine image. But I'm sure like in the future.
Slightly weirdly, in the past, because I want to go back a bit, but there was I think something called the DNA of Music project, which evolved into a $1 billion business called Pandora, I think it was called, which was all about the DNA, which was doing exactly what you're saying, but without the AI. So maybe your future is Pandora too, which is going to really open up the box.
Yeah, that's the key thing. You do it.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Just wanted to note that DNA of Music project hasn't been anything about in about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christian Bock was just the guy who tried to run it, was trying to show off. I don't think it really worked out.
It didn't work out. It came close, and it sort of went wrong. Yeah, I'm glad you know, because I thought I was the only dinosaur in the room. You look over, please. Yeah.
So training back to like the whole like banning smartphones for under 16s, it would definitely be able to have like a limit on the amount of screen time you have access to individual apps.
But they're also available on like many other sort of devices. So
Yeah.
like people can still find a way to access them and become influenced by them.
Yeah, interestingly though, when you look at the data, so like you got internet access around, I don't know, good internet access early 2000 maybe, and you got phones in the early 2000s. The time when you see the massive rise in mental health issues is the smartphone. So there's something about those apps and the it's something about having, like I know, like getting up and like looking on your computer, it's still, you can still be bad, but it's the bit where I'm lying in bed and scrolling for 4 hours that's actually the problem, right? So there's something about the physical piece and the algorithms that seems to be particularly potent, I think. Yeah.
It is incredible, because you get addicted to this stuff, and I actually know if I were to be in the front passenger seat of a taxi and someone attacked me from behind, I'd know the exact judo mechanism to stop that happening. Totally irrelevant, right? But there I am spending 5 minutes
watching the video.
Watching the video.
I'm very impressed.
Philip's a judo expert.
Karate.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if this has been answered already, but how do they regulate whether, have you seen when Kanye West teaches you how to do calculus? Have you seen those videos? Or like when they get politicians.
Kanye? No, I didn't.
Or when they get like politicians to say all these things like skibbity, like stuff like that. Like how do you know if that's right or wrong? Like they look so realistic.
Well, I mean, I found this out actually. I've got the Mega Nexus group. They actually have they sample my face and they sample my voice, and they said everybody take 5 days off holiday, and then they. And I said that's incredible. That's terrible. So there's worse. They got it saying, well, the answer is you're not going to be able to stop it.
Yeah.
So we've got to find other ways. That is coming, and the quality of that stuff is astounding. And of course, there's these terrible ransom attacks with people. I don't know if has everyone heard of these? You know, so these ransom attacks where there's a young person saying, "Mum, you know, I've been kidnapped, just got to pay this money," and it's just it's just fake media. They're happening. It's going to get much worse. The banks. As Philip said, we work with the Financial Conduct Authority quite a lot. They've got no idea what's coming. They really don't have the big words in that. Yeah.
And that, I think, comes back to that piece I was making about the truth piece, because, like, okay, we've already had one where Keir Starmer was caught, like, talking, I don't know if you saw this, but like, basically it was fake, but it sounded like it had been somebody recorded on their phone, Keir Starmer being rude about, a group of people that would have voted for him. Now it was fake, but before they realised it was fake, it was shared like over 1 million times. But if you imagine in the US presidential election, let's imagine somebody creates a fake news of Biden falling over or Biden saying something stupid, right? Because he's seen as, just saying, and that gets shared. The point is that people won't, people's instinct online is not to verify their source, so they'll just share it. And so that could tip the whole US election. So that comes back to that piece I was saying, where the AI will profile you, figure out it's probably not quite there yet, but it's close, right? So it will see everything you've written, and it'll be like, how do I make this person be more likely to vote for the right? And it will psychologically profile you, and then it will create a fake video or news that will look real, that will turn up on your feed, that will make you feel a certain way in order to make you vote a certain way. And I'll be able to do that at scale, so I'll just be able to press click, essentially. I don't know if Philip thinks like this is insane, but in my opinion, the technology could go this way. But I'll be able to press click, and that algorithm will deploy individualized things to move the entire population in a certain direction on a political point. So that, I think, is a real concern. And then for girls, I think the other piece is the ability to take your image now and create deep fake pornography. Like, it's also something you've got to be really aware of, right? That is already entirely possible. And so things like that, I think this is happening already. The bit I'm talking about is probably a year or two away, I would have thought, but.
Well, maybe it's about to happen in the next election.
Yeah, I think I am worried about that. Yeah.
Yep.
This is sort of in the health side of it. With health and like genes, they can now they're getting to the point where they can make new viruses based on like certain genes. Do you think sort of things like that will turn into like every country will have access to them? It'll be like some sort of nuclear weapon situation where nobody's releasing them, they're just threatening to release it because they know they have it.
I think all of that side of things is for your generation to determine, I'm afraid. It is absolutely the imponderables. The problem is with this stuff, it's a bit like, I think of it a bit like when you go out to a restaurant and you kind of sit down and you hope that the kitchen's clean. I don't know. My finding was when I worked in a restaurant, it was quite high end. It was like, oh my goodness, this is bad, And I think what you'll find is that the stuff isn't there, and your generation had better fix this fast and think it through. You've got to think the imponderables through. The sorts of horrible things, the horrible decisions, they've got to be thought through, and only then can you actually deal with them.
Yeah, so Lara briefly mentioned that we have this interesting project which is ongoing to design a DNA programmable biological microcomputer to treat a cell, as a programmable computer device. Why am I telling you this? Is that a few years ago somebody very senior in the insurance industry came to talk to me about what we did, and he said, what wacky projects have you got? So I said, well, we've got this DNA programmable microcomputer which looks quite plausible for the future. Oh, he said, no interest to the insurance industry. I said, how can you say that? He said, you're bound to screw up, there'll be nobody around to sue anybody.
Lawrence, do you want to comment on a view on this? Because you're the person who's going to sort us out.
Yeah. So if I go back to your original question, what I would say is, well, this sort of like gene editing, bioweapons and stuff like that, that does already exist. Like, we didn't necessarily need AI to make the first step in that, right? So we can use it for good and we can use it for bad. AI, again, can accelerate the rate and probably accelerate the degree to which we can affect people with our work. So I think it is very much like it's a philosophical question about like what is good, what is bad, what is suitable, how do we regulate it, how do we make sure people aren't making these kind of things. But I think people will make them, and it's about how we deal with that in the future.
The last two questions are really about the sort of downside of AI, and what we've not mentioned is cybercrime. And we've done a paper recently on the future of cybercrime. It was quite interesting. I did it with some judges, and my original title was A Criminal's Guide to AI and Emerging Technology. But these judges forced me to change it to the future of cybercrime. And I was quoting what I didn't get right. Crypto crime in 2023 was 27 billion globally. Wow. That sounds a lot. And then I realised, actually, this is just crypto crime. If you look at the figure for cybercrime, it's probably about 2 trillion. So there is a dark economy, black economy, whatever you want to call it, that's using the same technology, for generating deep fakes, for profiling victims, all of these sorts of things. And the problem is that, the police, for example, you might say, haven't got a clue, because, they're not up to the same level of, technology as the criminals.
So are you saying that the reason the number for cybercrime is so high is because it's just easier?
It's not just, every time you get a new technology, it's unregulated, it's unpoliced, etc. So there's an opportunity for criminals. And the difference with cybercrime is that it's digital. You could be sitting, in your apartment, on the other side of the world, and you can disguise your track. And the payoff, if you crack a blockchain system, it's probably in the order of billions that you can steal. It's a bit more lucrative than knocking off a honoured fan or whatever. So there'll be a sort of cybercrime is probably going to drive innovation for the next few years. That's the problem until the society sort of catches up with it.
Okay, I think you need to say we're done. I'd like to thank all of you. What a fascinating set of topics. Brilliant commentary. I hope you're inspired to go and change the world and not go the crime way. Thank you very much.